Good morning. We will call to order the June 10th, 2014 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this point, I'd like to invite Deputy Teddy Floyd with the Indian River County Sheriff's Department to come up and lead us in the invocation, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Joe Baird, County Administrator. Teddy, welcome. Would everyone please rise?
Let's bow our heads. Father, we thank you. We thank you for this great day. We thank you for our commissioners. We thank you for everyone in their respectable position. God, we pray a special prayer for all the men and women of law enforcement, all of our city officials, our families, God. We ask today that you give us wisdom and understanding to be able to make the right decisions that will affect change, positive change, Father. With this in mind, Father, we give you the praise. Let us all say amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Under the additions or deletions to the agenda, we've had a request from the Attorney's Office to add a brief update on the Oslo boat ramp hearing that was held last week. This will be purely informational. No action will need to be taken. Is there any other additions, deletions to the agenda?
What was amended?
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Proclamations and presentations. The first is a presentation of a proclamation for the 9th Annual National Dump the Pump Day in Indian River County on June 19th, 2014. This will be presented by Commissioner Solari and received by Karen Deagle and several others from the Go Line and Community Coach and Senior Resource Association. Welcome.
Good morning.
Commissioner Solari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before reading the proclamation, I'd just like to give a couple facts to help explain why I'm so happy to read this proclamation today. I've been a fan of the Go Line system, and for me the Go Line system is the face of public transportation in Indian River County. And as most of us know, in 2013, Go Line celebrated having over 1 million passengers in 2013, which was an incredible expansion of ridership. But really importantly for me, as a fiscal conservative, Go Line did it at the second lowest cost per ride in the state, 1% below Gainesville. And this has actually been the case where we've been the second lowest cost per state for some years. And I can't understand why Phil Metzen hasn't driven us to the lowest cost per state yet. But I'm expecting to hear that very, very soon. Just as an example, we're half the cost per ride that it costs a passenger in Palm Beach County. And you'd think, given that Palm Beach was so much larger, that they'd have the economies of scale. So I thank you for your work on that. And I am clearly very happy to read this proclamation about the 9th Annual National Dump the Pump Day in Indian River County on June 19th, 2014. Whereas June 19th, 2014 marks the 9th Annual National Dump the Pump as a day that encourages people to ride public transportation to save money, revitalize communities, protect the environment, reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and improve the quality of life for all Americans. And whereas people who ride public transportation can save, on average, more than $10,174 per year based on today's gas prices, the cost of owning a car, and the average unreserved parking rate. And whereas every $1 invested in public transportation generates approximately $4 in economic returns, powering community growth and revitalization. And whereas United States public transportation reduces the county's carbon footprint by 37 million metric tons, the equivalent to New York City, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Denver, and Los Angeles combined, stopping the use of electricity. Whereas United States public transportation use saves 4.2 million gallons of fuel annually. And whereas public transportation use in 498 urban areas in the United States saved 865 million hours annually in travel time and 400 million gallons of fuel, And without public transportation, annual congestion costs would have risen by nearly $21 billion, from $121 to $142 billion. And therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board does hereby proclaim June 19, 2014 as the 9th Annual National Dump Day in Indian River County, and that the Senior Resource Association's Go Line Indian River Transit System will join the public transportation agencies across the country and will participate in the 9th Annual National Dump the Pump Day to encourage transit ridership in June 19, 2014. And be it further proclaimed that Indian River County declares that by using public transportation, people save money, help the environment, reduce dependence on foreign oil, and improve America's quality of life. And be it further proclaimed that public transportation is an important part of our nation's transportation system and provides citizens with travel options other than driving a car. Adopted this 10th day of June, 2014, and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make a couple comments about Dump the Pump Day. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Chris Stevenson, who is my project coordinator, and Hood Lawrence, who is Senior Resource Association Board Chair, is here with me today, and my paparazzi is my community affairs coordinator. So thank you very much. This is a kind of a fun event for us, June 19th. It is a national day for transit. A lot of different transit agencies throughout the state of Florida, in fact, and nationally, but I know of many in the state of Florida who are participating on that day in different ways. Here in Indian River County, what we are doing is going to have a public transportation, get to know public transportation, learn how to ride Go Line or Community Coach. On June 19th at the Richardson Center between 9 and 10:30. We'll have refreshments, and we're going to have a presentation about transportation, and we're inviting the public to come out, ask questions, get to know the system so that they can use public transportation. A lot of times people have fear about using the system, getting on the bus, how to get off the bus, what route should they take. So that's the kind of thing that we would like to discuss and help individuals out. I also want to make a comment that if there's anyone that cannot make that event but would like to learn how to use public transportation, please call our office, 569-0903. We would be more than happy to send one of our ambassadors out to actually ride the system with our citizens and get them to know how to use it so that they can take it. So thank you very much for your consideration, the proclamation today, and I hope all of you will attend Dump the Pump Day, and more importantly, I would hope that maybe all of you could ride the bus to work on Dump the Pump Day. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming down.
Picture?
Karen's directing for a picture.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, have a good one.
Thank you once again.
Next is a somewhat of a very special proclamation. It's a presentation of a proclamation designating June 21st, 2014 as a day for commemorating Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment, Rangers, 1st Infantry Division. And these are some Vietnam veterans that will be here having a reunion in the county. This proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Flesher. Commissioner Flesher?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. Frank, please come on up. And I have to say that it's a great honor and privilege to be able to read this proclamation in English in a democracy. You fought during very misunderstood times, very challenging times, somewhat unappreciative times, and I think that I understand that it took 20 years to say welcome home. But I want you to know that I say thank you, this board says thank you, and that we embrace what you did. Your elite team was an integral part of us being to be able to stand before the American flag and to be able to enjoy all of what we have in democracy. So thank you and welcome home.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Commissioners.
Let me present this proclamation to you, and then we'll have a few words about some activities. Thank you. The proclamation reads as follows, designating June 21st, 2014 as a day for commemorating Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment, Rangers, 1st Infantry Division. Whereas Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment, Rangers, 1st Infantry Division served in combat in Vietnam from July 1967 through April 1970. And whereas its infantrymen were awarded numerous Purple Hearts, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, and earned many other awards and honors in defense of our country, with many paying the ultimate sacrifice. Whereas Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment, Rangers, 1st Infantry Division gathered to reunite in Indian River County to celebrate and to recall their time of faithful service in defense of our country. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the Board does hereby designate June 21st, 2014 as a day of commemorating Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment, Rangers, 1st Infantry Division, deceased and living, for their service in time of war, defending our country, and urges all Florida residents to fly the American flags in tribute. Duly adopted this 10th day of June 2014, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Frank.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate you all for recognizing Delta Company's service. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Frank, that was brief, and I want you to say that this Board of County Commissioners and all the citizens appreciate that you're taking this opportunity to have a return roll call, an event here in Vero Beach and Indian River County, and that while you're home here, if there's anything that we can do, please don't hesitate. In addition, I'd like to invite you over to the Victory Center. I think that your attendees, as the guys all get together, will appreciate the welcoming that they'll receive there. They'll see a lot of friends, and they'll see a lot of things that they might want to see right here in Indian River County. So please put that on your visit list.
We'll try to fit it in, Commissioner. Thanks for your invitation.
Is there anything else that the public needs to know about anything you're doing?
Well, we're going to have some early arrivals that I hope will enjoy what Vero Beach has to offer. I'm proud of our home here. We're going to start off with a dinner and a meet and greet at Waldo's. The next day we're going to enjoy the beach. We're staying the hospitality extended by the Holiday Inn Oceanside, and Jennifer Bates up there has done a great job for us in trying to make us as comfortable as possible there. We are also going to the SEAL Museum, and Rick Kaiser, who is recovering from his injuries he sustained during a exhibit over at Quail Valley, a jump that he made. I hope he'll be able to. He was to give us a personal tour. Whether or not he'll be able to, I don't know, but we're going to enjoy the SEAL Museum and the Underwater Demolition Team Museum there on our island. We're going to do that in the afternoon. We're going to finish up with an evening dinner there. The next day, we're going to have what I believe to be our highlight, which is going to be a memorial service on Veterans Memorial Island Sanctuary. And we're going to remember the 41 that didn't return home with us. So, and then we're going to move over to the Bethel Creek House for a barbecue and the hamburgers and ribs and such, and we're going to follow up with a steak dinner that evening, and we're going to have a local small band participate in our celebration, and we're going to see how many may be up to play a little basketball. We're getting a little long in the tooth, and but we might go over there to do our best, enjoy the facilities over at J.C. Park across the street. Again, I want to appreciate the proclamation and the commissioner's interest in this, and certainly you are all invited to come by if you wish and share a beer with us, and we will try to make it down to the Victory Center down over in the mall. And
If you think, Frank, you said you were a bit long in the tooth as far as the basketball game. You haven't seen this team play.
well, you guys are a lot younger than we are, so
We're toothless when it comes to
Well, there's a couple of us.
So I appreciate it very much, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you guys did.
Thank you.
Is somebody with the camera? Okay, oh, there's Paige back here.
As we have a little return music.
Thank you. Here we go. Thanks.
You good, Paige?
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you again, sir.
There is no minutes or informational items. That will take us to the consent agenda. I'd like to go ahead and pull the item E, the miscellaneous budget amendment, just for procedure. Is there anyone else that wishes to pull anything?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, excuse me. That's right. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to have a consent agenda item pulled? Okay, I see none. My apologies. So again, motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Item E is miscellaneous budget amendment. There's a donation to the Indian River County Libraries and a replacement vehicle for facilities management. Approval. We have a motion.
And a
from
second.
Commissioner Slory, second from Commissioner Flesher. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman? Just for the record, when we see replacement vehicles added in the mid-year time, Joe, can you again advise the age and condition of the vehicle?
Yes, the vehicle being replaced is a year 2000. It has 199,000 miles on it, and it's a very worn vehicle.
Thank you for using it well. No further.
All right, we have a motion, Commissioner Slory, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. There's no constitutional officers items. That takes us to public items. First is a public hearing. This is a quasi-judicial public hearing. It is a request by Hutton Growth 1 LLC to rezone approximately 3.32 acres from RM10 residential multifamily, which is up to 10 units per acre, to Planned Development Mixed Use District, PDMXD, and to obtain conceptual plan development plan approval for a project to be known as Family Dollar Gifford Mixed Use. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The parties to the proceeding are Indian River County and Hutton Growth 1 LLC. At this time, Commissioners, I need to ask you if you've had any type of ex parte communications, site visits, or independent investigations.
No, sir.
Am I right, Commissioner Flesher?
No, sir.
Davis?
I have driven by the property, but that's it.
Okay. I have had none. Commissioner Zork?
Same as Commissioner Davis, driven by the property but no contact.
Okay. Commissioner Sorry?
driven by the property. I think I heard some mention of it at a public meeting, but no private conversation of any sort.
Okay, thank you. And then Commissioner Sawyer, will come back to you to confirm that you have an open mind and are able to base your decision on the evidence presented and applicable law.
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Zork?
Yes.
I, too, am open-minded and based on evidence. Commissioner Fleischer, or Davis, I'm sorry.
I do.
And
Yes,
Commissioner
sir.
Fleischer. Okay.
We're wed.
At this point, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this? If so, please stand, and the clerk will swear you in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, we will have a presentation by county staff. Mr. Bowling, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is the first mixed-use rezoning project to come before the Board of County Commissioners. We've had the policies in place and now the land development regulations in place for it. And the process that this application is going through is a plan development, conceptual plan, and rezoning combination. This application has been through staff review through the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended that you all approve this rezoning and conceptual plan. It comes to you all now for final action on those two items. If you all approve it, the applicant will move forward with a preliminary PD plan, which will include a final site plan. That will be reviewed by staff, and ultimately this site will be platted, and you all will see that plat probably on a future consent agenda. In terms of the proposed site itself, it's shaded in brown here in the middle of this aerial map. This is about almost a 3.5 acre site at the southeast corner of 45th Street, Giffords Main Street, and 43rd Avenue. And you can see from this aerial a couple of things. The tan, the brown color that's around the site itself is designated residential with single-family and multifamily projects there. So there's a lot of residential, a lot of rooftops around this particular site. Also, the red that's shown here to the west is commercial industrial. So you can see that this site is adjacent to commercial industrial, but also has a lot of residential around it. And in terms of mixed use, this is a small mixed use project, but it essentially mixed use is now the way to do what we used to call neighborhood commercial zoning. And instead of coming in with a rezoning to a neighborhood commercial use, we now have an actual project, a plan development plan for you all to see, for the community to see, and to have it integrated with residential. And so at least up to this point, I think the process has been good and has been successful. In terms of looking a little closer at the site, this site is zoned RM10, residential multifamily, up to 10 units per acre, and most of the area to the north, to the south, and to the east is also zoned that. To the west is some heavy commercial, a bit of residential to the northwest, and then more industrial as you go a little bit further to the west. The site to the west is a church, the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and they do own this site, the subject site as well. So they are the owner. Family Dollar is the applicant. In terms of the site itself, it's presently mostly wooded, although there are some exotics as well as some native trees that are on the site itself. And you can see again to the east and to the south and to the north, multifamily, 45th Street up here at the top, and 43rd Avenue here to the west, the church over here to the west as well. The proposed development is occurring on about 3.3 acres. Up to 33 residential units could be developed on the site, in this case on the eastern portion of the site. And the Family Dollar store, the commercial retail building that's proposed, is just over 8,300 square feet. This is the conceptual PD plan for the project itself, with the Family Dollar being close to the intersection of 43rd and 45th Street, a stormwater pond, and actually kind of a bit of an amenity here between the commercial and the future residential. The first phase of the development, which I'll show you in a little bit more detail, is for the Family Dollar to go first, and the residential would be later. You can see from this particular view that a common driveway is proposed to the site off of 45th Street that will be used by the commercial and the future residential. A westbound left turn lane is proposed to serve this driveway. There's also a driveway that is proposed off of 43rd Avenue, a bit away from the intersection itself, so there is good flow through the site, access into the site, and also connection to the residential portion of the project off to the east. This red line is the phase line, phase 1, so you can see what will be done with phase 1. Phase 2, again, being a future residential. It could be an adult living facility, a senior housing, it could be market housing, any type of residential. I also wanted to point out a couple of items. There is a corner clip for right-of-way that's being donated with this project at the intersection to accommodate future intersection improvements. There's a sidewalk that's being proposed on the south side of 45th Street. A bit of an oddity in this area, but it's a good thing. In this particular case, there's plenty of separation from the canal itself, and it also allows for some good pedestrian movement through this site, in front of this site, to the residential driveway that's to the east, and also for a transit stop that's proposed that's convenient to both the residential and the commercial use here. There's a sidewalk system that goes from the transit stop and from 45th Street into the site, and also through the site in terms of around the commercial building, and then through across where the stormwater facility is proposed, and then also into the residential portion of the project. Again, full movement driveways for 45th Street and for 43rd Avenue, and a possible future driveway connection here to the east. What this applicant will do is stub out to their east property line. If in the future there's an opportunity or desire for redevelopment of the residential site to the east, a connection could be made there. And even if this connection is not made any time soon, again, there will be a pedestrian connection with this 45th Street sidewalk so that pedestrians can get easily onto the transit stop that's proposed, and also into the project itself. Dedications and improvements. The corner clip at the intersection is proposed. The transit stop along the site's 45th Street frontage. The sidewalk as well along 45th Street. The turn lane. There will be a tree mitigation fee paid where there will be some protected trees that will be removed from the site. There's also a common architectural theme between the commercial and the future residential. So there'll be some similarities in terms of materials and sloped roof feature. Like many other PDs in the last several years, we do have a zoning reverter that's in the rezoning ordinance that if the project does not proceed within 7 years, that the zoning will go back to the current zoning of RM10. In terms of buffering on the site, the major roadway buffers along 45th and 43rd are proposed. There's also a type B buffer between the commercial portion of the site and the residential to the south, and that includes a masonry wall, and there'll be landscaping between the wall and the borders of the site. And in this case, the wall is extending a bit further to the east, so that, again, even if you're in the residential area here to the south, you won't be able to see the back of the Family Dollar store itself. Although, again, corridor requirements apply to this particular store, there are foundation plantings around the perimeter of the building itself. In terms of public benefits, the right-of-way dedications, the 45th Street sidewalk, the transit stop, those are all benefits. This project, I think the applicant has probably done a little more than we normally see in terms of working with community leaders. Even before the pre-application conference, staff asked them to get with community leaders, and they did. And one of the items that the applicant has agreed to is to prohibit the sale or consumption of alcoholic beverages on the commercial portion of the site. They're going to be selling convenience goods and groceries, and that was something that I think the community saw as something good with this project, and that restriction can be done because it is a PD rezoning. In terms of the architectural elevations, again, these elevations don't show the landscaping that will be planted along the foundations of the site, but there are some canopy type of treatments and window type of treatments, and also just kind of bringing some articulation to the building through color and some other aspects of the site. And then a sloped roof feature. Actually, it's a lot like the slope of the entry feature for the church on the west side of 43rd Avenue. So we think that with these features and the foundation plantings and the scale of the building, it'll fit into what's around the project and the future residential to the east. Staff's recommendation is that the board approve the rezoning and the conceptual PD plan with the conditions listed in staff's report, and I would be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Stan, Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Flory?
A couple, if I may. Stan, could you tell me what type of notification was given to the surrounding community during the process?
Right. A few things. One is, as is common with the rezoning, before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the board, notice to owners of property within 300 feet. We also have a email notice that we do for any projects that are proposed in Gifford. So prior to the pre-application conference and prior to the technical review committee, the Planning and Zoning Commission and the board email notice was sent out as well.
And thank you. And what type of responses did you get, if any?
We've gotten a few. One is we've actually had positive response from community leaders, and I think we have one here that will speak. Also, we had one response from the owner of the residential property to the south. Happy for the Family Dollar, thinks it'll be a benefit, likes the sidewalk connection. Only concern we heard was, well, if and when the residential develops for this project, I wonder if it's going to compete with my multifamily, which may be the case. Nonetheless, all positive for the commercial aspect.
Thank you very much. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Zorka?
No, I'm good for now.
Stan, can you go back to the slide that had the red line with the Phase 1
Certainly.
Divider? How far... Well, one, is there any way that we could have them include the transit stop in Phase 1?
I'm sorry, it will be in Phase 1.
Okay.
That's a great question. 45th Street sidewalk and the transit stop will be in Phase 1. Yeah, that's very important, and it's important to make to make the commercial work. Also, just want to mention that this is a stop. In other words, they'll have the landing and so forth for it. The shelter is another matter. I know the applicant's been coordinating with the MPO in terms of getting a shelter here, but this sets it up perfectly. It's a good location. MPO is in favor of this.
Okay, so the transit stop and the sidewalk will go the whole length.
Yes,
in Phase 1.
In Phase 1.
Okay,
correct.
Great, good. All right, any other further questions of staff? Is there a representative of Hutton Growth One LLC here that would wish to make a presentation or comment?
I don't know that she got sworn in.
Yeah, I don't think. Did you get sworn in earlier? No. Well, come on, step up and we'll swear you in. If the clerk could go ahead and swear you in, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Hi,
if you could give us your name and address for the record, please.
Bonnie Merriweather. I'm with Campo Engineering at 1725 East 5th Avenue in Tampa, Florida. I just wanted to say that I'm here if there are any questions. I am representing the applicant in Campo Engineering, and I think John has done a great job with representing everything. So if there are any questions, I am available.
Just real quick, if I could.
Commissioner Davis, yes.
There's a ditch on the north side of this, correct? Is there? There is? Yeah, on the north side. Did they plan on filling that in?
No.
Piping it? No?
No. There'll be no culverting is proposed, but there is kind of an unusual bit of distance between the canal and the south edge of pavement of 45th and where the sidewalk will go. So there'll be a lot of clearance there anyway.
Okay.
Any questions of the Hutton One representative?
I'll save it for a minute. Thank you.
Okay. Bonnie, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the proposed mixed-use project? No. Freddie, did you get sworn in?
No, I didn't.
Okay, if the clerk could...
There you go again.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Freddie, the first two swearing-ins are free, but the third one is a $10
Well,
fee.
you told me I had one on the list. Freddie Wolf, 4590 57th Avenue in Vero Beach. Been a lifelong resident of Indian River County and living in the Gifford area. I'm very, very happy to stand here today. I see a precedent being set, and it's a great one, wherein there's communication, and communication is the key to resolving and moving forward with any issues. I really commend the various entities from Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church and their officials, the county staff and their officials, the Family Dollar administration that came down and actually met with the individuals in the community. That really went a long way because they didn't wait until the horse was out of the barn and then say, okay, ride him. No, instead they called us in from the beginning and we began to do some what ifs. And that was really, really great. And that offers an opportunity for people to have some buy-in. Many, many years ago, I'm not going to go too many years back, but I remember serving with Penny Chandler on what they call a workforce enhancement task force through the county commission, through the Chamber of Commerce, rather. And that study that we did on the command of the county commissioners at that time was to look out into the Gifford area and find out some things that you would like to see in your area, from employment, economic development. But one thing popped up, and I had never heard it, and I think they brought in some consultants over in the old courthouse to talk further about this mixed use. And it was new to me because I didn't think about it, but a lot of people don't have cars. They don't have transportation. And that presentation at the county courthouse executive building that particular evening really shed some light how we can have some amicable existence of both a commercial as well as residential areas. And this is, in my opinion, a great example of how that can come about. I like the fact that when we're in the process now, we're in the process of doing the Gifford Neighborhood Plan. Not only the Gifford Neighborhood Plan, but we're also looking at 45th Street improvements, which means all of this is great. This motion that's moving ahead will allow us to have a centerpiece. We have some centerpieces already there. I commend Sunset Apartments, how they have really beautified that area from inception, and over the years it still is a fantastic looking facility there. I commend Mount Zion Church across the street to come in with that beautiful church and the shrubbery and the beautiful landscapes that there. I commend Dodgertown Elementary, how over the years when it was called Clemens, it's great to see that that's a centerpiece. The county administration building from the supervisor elections office and all those. To me, that's a great centerpiece. Now, with Family Dollar coming in, it would help that centerpiece to expand a little further. I was a little disappointed when I heard that we weren't going to get that ditch covered in front, because that would be a great beginning there, because that's one day I want to see that covered area in there, so that ditch is no longer visible, that we can have safety, because we have kids. You're going to have more kids coming that way because of Family Dollar, more families, elderly citizens across the street. So I hope we just put a pin in that right now, not to throw it out with the baby with the bath water, but allow us to take a look at that again for safety purposes, for cosmetic purposes, and really looking at that area. Again, I just want to just say to the community involvement, Mr. William Holt, who's here today, a deacon over at Mount Zion, how that whole process was so great to see it unfold. Some of the members of our Progressive Civic League also in the community attended some of the TRC meetings. And I've attended several of those types of meetings, and not all of them are love sessions. I've seen some that were a little heated. But I must say this particular session was quite, shockingly loving. It was a great marriage when we actually had the individuals from Family Dollar and their engineers and people from the Gifford area, the county staff, and all three got along. No one had any slings on their arms. There was no noose on necks. It was really a great opportunity. So we do ask that one portion of here do be adhered to, and that's the portion about asking that no alcohol beverages be sold at that site. And the reason why, you have a church across the street, you have a school down on the corner right down from that. You have an elderly citizen complex, so it's just not a good fit as far as that particular site. But on behalf of Freddie Woolfolk, being a part of this process, I'm just happy to say I want to support staff recommendation that we approve this project, and it'll be another piece of the puzzle to give that 45th Street facelift and the pride and dignity that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. Anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this? Yes, ma'am. I don't believe you were sworn in either. If you'd come up.
Happy to swear in. My name is Patricia Hunt, and I swear in Jesus' name.
She'll read it to you.
Okay, that's fine.
She'll give you the rules.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely, yes. I'm here because I came here a few months ago, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of the commissioners' time and effort. I came here because I was having problems along with other pro se litigants, and I have...
Ma'am? Yeah. Just, this is specifically
no,
about...
this is specific, and this affects the county and the people in this county.
Is it specific to this particular project?
Not to this project, but it's to this county.
Okay,
It has to do with
we're only
safety.
hearing testimony now related to this particular project.
Okay.
Ms. Hunt.
Then
Okay.
will I have time to speak after?
We will,
Okay.
if the board is willing, under public discussion, we'll grant you some time.
Yeah, it has to do with the county courthouse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel.
Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak to this particular project? Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Please stand up so we can get you sworn in now. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I do. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sharon Rollerson. I'm the property manager at Heritage Villas, and I just wanted to say that we're very excited for the about this project. My only concern is the commotion, the lights, and the security that surround the building, because we are, as you know, we're surrounding the Family Dollar basically, and I'm just concerned for my residents. Is it possible to get a copy of the plans?
Yes, certainly. And in fact, if I could get your name and email address, we could contact you. When they go through the next step, if they're approved here, the final site plan, we'll be looking at shielding lights and some of the dumpsters and things like that in a little more detail. And so you could come to the meetings and see the more detailed plans. You can see the plans now, but you might want to wait until more details are available. And if you give me your contact information, we'll make sure you hear from us.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Stan, any final presentations or comments?
No, sir.
Any final questions of staff? Did you have a question or just
a
comment?
question to know procedurally when I should do this. It's sort of a question to Campo, but it's more dealing with the site plan question on the culverting of the 45th Street entrance, which is not really relevant to the zoning request, but I don't know if I should just bring it up as a question. This would be maybe just an invitation from, and if you want to come up to the podium again for a second. With the driveway entrance on 45th Street, obviously there'll be a culvert and a head wall on either side of that.
Correct.
The discussion might be with Public Works is, in lieu of the head wall on the west side, is to take the value of that, convert it to additional piping value. Look at, the county has some monies that we're looking at doing some things on 45th Street where we might be able to bridge the gap of the county doing a portion, to close a portion of that canal on 45th Street on the south side, but not asking you to do anything more than what you'd be required to do, but shift the dollars. Instead of putting in the concrete head wall on the west side, take the value of that, and we can add that towards a piping value to see how far we could get in closing that section between there and 43rd Avenue.
There'd be a lot more additional cost associated with that, with permitting, and the piping. If you're asking that Campo take on all that, I don't.
No, I think it would be our public works side is we're looking at doing some things along the 45th Street corridor anyway. I don't know if it goes this far west.
Well, that's fine with us if the county wants to look into
Right, it may be
that.
something that we do jointly. I wouldn't be asking you to do anything more than you're required to do.
That
No.
would kill the project if
No.
you're asking us to do that.
No. This would be just basically cost shifting whatever the value of that west head wall would be, is say, hey, we'll put that in towards the piping fund to close that gap if it works. If not, then just do the head wall on both sides and we're done.
Mr. Commissioner?
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman,
Davis?
I think that's my concern, and I wouldn't stop the project based on that. Do we have the ability to require it in this? Yes, we do, but that's not what we're all about. This is a good project for the community. I think you're in good shape here.
Correct.
But I do know that we've been making some concerted efforts to, I've always believed that's one of the areas right here in the heart of Gifford that we really should look into trying, while we have somebody here, go ahead and take care of this section in front of this and kind of tag team that with the developer.
Yeah, let me have Chris Kafer look at costing it out, and I'll bring something back on our portion.
And again, no additional, whatever your value is for that.
Yeah.
No, not a penny more, but we can coordinate and we can add to that to maybe try to get a portion of that improved, which would just be I think an additional start for the.
And it'll certainly enhance your project to have that culverted. I think everybody would agree with that.
Yeah, if we have, the information, contact information, who to coordinate with, then
okay.
that would help.
Okay, thank you. Any other final questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. At this point, Commissioners, it's
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Flesher?
After reviewing these documents, there appears to be a tremendous amount of labor involved, and I want to say special thanks to Stan Bowling, the applicants, the community leaders. I think this was a fine example of a collaborative effect, and in conclusion, there are 7 stipulations for this project to go forward, and it took a lot of work. I think those 7 stipulations answer just about any question you can have about this project. So thank you once again, Stan. With that, move staff recommendation with the 7 stipulations.
Second.
Upon motion by Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Slurry. Any discussion among the commission?
I'm just excited about the project, as it appears that it's going to be a great asset to the community and bring a few jobs towards the community. And this is we often talk about light industry coming in. This is a clean situation coming into the community. And thank you for adding that no alcohol clause too by the applicant. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Stan. Gentlemen. Takes us into public discussion items. First is a request to speak from Joe Wiggins regarding South County Park multipurpose building and playground for children. Good morning, Joe. Welcome.
Good morning. I kind of hate I haven't been to some of the meetings here lately. I've been under the weather. And so quite a few things have happened, special to South County Park. As of right now, my feeling was the park is basically almost closed until you have a lacrosse tournament, because the children don't really have any place to play, nothing to do. Only the 4 to 5 year olds, they have this little sand pit back there that they can go on the slides. I think it's 2 slides back there that they could go on, in a rock wall that they could climb. And that's basically it. We don't have nowhere near the people that used to come to the park. I take my grands to the park, and they got there about 15 minutes, and they through. They about ready to go because there's nothing to do. And now this lacrosse thing, from what I had heard in the beginning, it was going to kind of be open to the public, way the other children could be able to play or whatever, but that's not the case. This is a private entity, and everything is private, including the restrooms, everything. So the park is really of no use to the basic children that want to go out there to play. Habitat have built in a whole lot more housing and everything. We got a lot more children in South County. And they don't have anything to do. And coming to the multi-purpose building, this is a project that's been going on ever since my daughter was 8 and 9 years old. They've graduated from college and everything, high school, college, and now they're working, and we still don't have the building. And now we even have less to do out there. It's basically like it was in the older days, where we end up having to go behind the churches and stuff to be able to play softball and stuff. They got the softball fields out there, but those gates locked too, unless you got a committed team or whatever to go out there to play. Other than that, just children that get together and want to play softball don't have any place to play. That's what the park was supposed to have been created for. That's one of the reasons I wanted the park there in the beginning, for the children to be able to have something to do. And now it's basically just like it was before the park even came there. In the multi-purpose building, I guess I'll probably be dead and gone before it's built. And people even donated the money to build the building. And then they came up with the excuse they don't have the money to operate the building. But we seem to have money to operate all other things outside of things for the children to do. But yet, we want the children to stay out of trouble. But if we don't give them nothing to do, what do you expect? I mean, the jails started getting full mainly because they don't have a place to go or nothing to do. And with Habitat building all those houses there now, 11th Street is basically full with children riding bicycles up and down the road, and the road's not even big enough for 2 cars hardly to go down through there. No sidewalk. That's been brought up. And they just don't have any place to walk or travel down 11th Street Southwest. So my problem is I want to know what are you going to do about the multi-purpose building and playground for the children to be able to have something to do.
Joe, Mr. Baird, could you give us an update on where we are with that, please?
Yes, it's under design right now. It should be complete within, the multipurpose building should be complete within about 15 months from now. We're hoping 15 to 18 months it will be complete. Also, we're looking at putting a nature trail around that whole facility. We also, when you say we have 2 tennis courts, we have outside basketball courts, the lacrosse, we try to have organized sports so that lacrosse, if someone cannot afford, they offer scholarships for children so that they can play on those lacrosse fields and be on a team and learn the sport. Our baseball fields, which that quad, obviously we have organized baseball out there also, but when there aren't games scheduled, children can go there and play. In fact, I saw some children out there playing on those fields. And the other area that you were concerned is having an open field. We're looking at that right now. We're actually getting costs to clear it so that we can also add that as an addition to this park. So this park has a lot of amenities, and there's a lot of pickup basketball, tennis, and other facilities that are used. So, and we are going to have the building done within 15 to 18 months. It's under design right now.
Well, that's something I've been hearing, I mean, like I say, ever since my daughter was 8, 9 years old, and I haven't seen anything yet of a building, and they keep telling me about it's coming, it's going to be here within this amount of time, but that amount of time has started growing. I keep getting older and older. Right now, I remember the time when I went out to the park, I could run around, but now I can't. And so that's what I'm wanting to know. When is this going to materialize? Because right now, it's to me, I just can't see it materializing. And the children can't either. Matter of fact, instead of going to the park, they're starting to run the streets again in our area. So if we adults don't do something to get the children to be able to have a place to go and enjoy themselves, we fail. That's the way I feel.
Mr. Bear, can you just make sure Mr. Wiggins is updated as we hit milestones, like when the final design is done, when we go out for bid, when we award the bid, just kind of those kind of milestones? So he's aware of
I'll
those.
send him a schedule of when we plan to have the design, when we plan to bid it, and the construction time. We'll do a timeline for you, and we'll show. But we're well underway as far as design.
Okay.
Also, I've talked with Mr. Zork, and he told me the same thing. He showed me some sketches of some things, and that's about far as it's gotten. So I just like to see something materialize, like these other things that's done materialize, just like the lacrosse field. When they came up with the lacrosse field, I had no idea it was going to be a lacrosse field there. And then all of a sudden, I saw them working. I assumed that they was getting ready to do the building, but then it turned out they doing lacrosse field, and they took up all the other space for parking lots. So I just want to know what's going on and when we going to have something for the children to do outside of just special groups and organized teams. I want it to be where just regular street children can go out there in the park, organize them a team, just like we used to do, and play softball, or football, or flag football, or whatever. I got a daughter to play flag football, and they got a little old spot about big as my backyard to be playing in.
So, Joe, as was said, we're shooting for 15 to 18 months to have all that done, and there will be just a plain open field, open for the kids to go out there and run around on like you're asking for.
Okay.
Okay.
Also, on what's the size of the open space, kind of just the grass area? Is it a couple of acres, or what kind of size area do we have?
I've got an aerial here. We're looking at one of the problems. We've got a wetland area in the middle of it.
Right.
But I'm not sure of the size, but we're trying to incorporate that area in also, so as you get to the walking path, which is also going to surround the whole facility, which will be about 3 years, 2.5 years away. We think.
And
so
also, could we?
We're getting prices of clearing that area right now. We're getting prices on clearing the property at the fairgrounds, and also we're getting a price right now to clear the area in Gifford they want cleared at the Gifford Park.
Right. Once we kind of look that over, is there a way we could put the open play area, since it's really just clearing and sodding, is do that at the beginning of the process instead of at the end?
We're actually trying to put it ahead of the
right.
process. Right
okay,
now.
Good. That would be good. So that might come sooner.
Commissioner Slory?
Mr. Chairman, I think it was a good idea to get that timeline, and if we could just, when it's ready, put it under informational items so that not only Mr. Wiggins but everybody else can see it.
Okay.
And Joe, the plans here that you're talking about right now, especially for that area where the open area is going to be, include anything in the way of playground equipment?
Right now, we're just looking at clearing it and filling it to have an open area.
If
There is a playground equipment
back.
there. There's already playground equipment there.
Is there?
Park, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's two slides, a rock wall, and that's for 4 and 5-year-olds. But what do you do when 13 and 12-year-olds? They come out there, they get on the merry-go-round, and they take the little children don't even have a place to play then, period.
Well, if there is a possibility to just make sure there's at least some area to do more in the future, now's the time to look at that, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiggins.
Thank you.
Next is a request to speak from Felicia Wiggins regarding public access to fields, restrooms, and have a South County pool. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. It's Felicia.
I'm sorry, Felicia.
I want to reiterate on a few things that my dad spoke of. The last time I was here at the meeting and I had asked about the field being accessible, the lacrosse field being accessible to the public, I was told that the lock would be taken down. However, the lock is not taken down. There is a more formal no trespassing sign placed on the gate. And I would hate to have to disagree with my dad, but all of the other fields are open and accessible as long as they are not dressed for a game or a tournament. So the baseball fields are open, the tennis courts are open, the basketball field is open. Why can the lacrosse field not be accessible to us? Also, there is no games. I am out there at the least 3 times a week. And I see lacrosse out there once or twice. That's if they have games. Also, the restrooms. The place where we practice, I play flag football. We risk injury, and I wish there was a way to blow this up. We risk injury playing on this open area. Can I bring you these pictures?
Jason,
we
Jason,
can
could
put it
you
on
put
the
that
overhead.
or Stan, put that on the OMO, please?
We risk injury playing, I don't know if it's going to show, on that field, on that open area. It's covered in holes and pits. We have had injuries where people have injured their ankles just running, trying to make a play, because it's not safe out there, but that's the only place we have to practice. Whereas, like I said, when the baseball fields are not dressed for a game, we can use those. But it doesn't accommodate for football, it accommodates for baseball and softball, things of that nature. Even the outside areas. That's another view of where we play, where we practice. And that not only includes us, that includes smaller children too. Little pee-wee football teams, softball teams, whoever. We all risk injury playing out there. And like I said, we have sustained some injuries. Water fountains. This building has water fountains readily accessible. This building does not. But these are the bathrooms that are open for us to use. Now, mind you, the area that I just showed you where we practice football, where the children practice their football and soccer games, is all the way at the other end of the park. This is at the entrance of the park. This is where the softball games take place. This is where the fields are open and accessible, but we don't have water accessible to us on these fields. When we're down at the other end practicing and the children have to go to the restroom, if they're 2 and 3 years old, they're not going to make it to the entrance of the park to use the restroom. So where do they go? To the bushes, because this facility is locked. This sign here is the same sign here. It says, and I remember being here last time, I was told that the bathrooms are locked because there was $32,000 in damage to the restroom and to the fields. What public bathroom has not been defaced in some manner? There are children and teenagers out there. They write on the wall, slap some paint on it. It's not a big deal. No toilets were broken. Nothing was removed from the bathroom. I have never saw field damage before that lacrosse field was gated. Like I said, we're out there on a regular. So for us to not have access to these things, and it's a public park from my understanding, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but lacrosse, on their sign, you must contact them to even get access to the field. Now note, that field is not dressed for a game. There is no one on that field, and there is no reason that we should not be able to practice on the field. Our cleats do the same thing theirs do. It kicks up grass and dirt from time to time. What is that hurting? That's what the field is for. So I don't understand why we don't have access to it the same way we have access to every other field out there. That's the basketball, tennis courts. This is lacrosse. This is lacrosse. I was told that these would be taken down. I went out there a week later just to see if they were taken down. But like I said, I was greeted with a more formal no trespassing sign.
Ms. Wade, answer to your questions. One is, if we get your information, we'll be glad to send you the pictures from the vandalism at the restroom, but there was quite a bit of damage. There were things broken, ripped off the wall. I agree with you, a little paint or marker pen isn't that big of a deal, but this was serious damage. This was just not a little paint on the wall.
But it still remains to be open.
I'm just telling you, there was serious damage. Second, the big difference between the other fields and lacrosse is the parents and the volunteers of the lacrosse organization are solely responsible for paying for all of the maintenance on those fields. They pay to mow them, they pay to fertilize, they pay to water, they pay the electric bill. So that is why they have it closed off. Now, I'm sure that if you all approach them and say, hey, could we rent some field access? That's what the Soccer Association does with their fields for other groups, and work out an arrangement with them. I'm sure they would be willing to work with you on that. But it's because they pay out of their own pocket. There's no tax dollars going to the maintenance of those fields. It's purely coming out of their pockets, and that's why they can control the access to the fields.
So then why was it built in a public park? The key word is association. We don't have an association. We just have a team that plays flag football.
Okay, and I think, again, if you contact them and say, hey, we would like to use your fields once a week, twice a week, and you can work out an arrangement with them.
But once again, it's a public park. I don't have to contact anybody to play basketball. I don't have to contact anybody to play tennis. I don't have to contact anybody to play on the softball fields as long as they're not dressed for a game. Why should we have to contact someone to play on a field that was already there, that was already accessible? The only difference is it didn't have a gate and it didn't have lines and trees there. I don't understand why we would have to contact anybody.
Let me help a little bit with it. What we've found is it's similar to I'm going to say like the Humane Society, where we have certain volunteers that perform a function that the county could or would have to do, but they do it with volunteers and they do it with a true burn for the entity or the organization. When I say burn, I'm talking about that drive from within. Mm-hmm. And it's modeled similar after the Indian River Soccer Association. We're right there at the fairgrounds. That is county property, but yet what we've done is we've actually leased a formal lease with those individuals at the Soccer Association to maintain those fields. They put up the concession stand and had the community support by doing that. And when they need little things from the county, like millings for the road that we're doing as we're making improvements to the fairgrounds, we try to incorporate that in there. But we don't have a division of soccer here at the county that actually runs those fields and Public Works maintains and all that kind of stuff. So they do have exclusive access to that. Now, with that said, there's understandings that if there's times whenever certain groups or entities would like to use the fields, we encourage them to do that and work something out with them on an either formal or informal basis, whatever works best. We also took that model and we've done that up at Sebastian. up there at the North County soccer fields, Sebastian Soccer Association, and that's working fairly well also. Now, there's other spots up there where the county does maintain. For example, if I'm not mistaken, the Gifford, there's a Gifford Little League field that we do maintain, but there's also, we have a similar lease with the Gifford Little League for another field right up there by the Gifford Youth Activity Center. So, not to drag it out, but to answer your question, if it is on public land, then why can't anybody get to it? It's because we have leases with those individuals that provide that service to the community. At the fairgrounds, it's the Indian River Soccer Association. In Gifford, it's Gifford Little League. And they do have the access, the opportunity to restrict access. But at the same time, I see some members that are actively involved in it out there. They'll open it up for kids to play on, too. They understand that there's a good balance between the two. And so that's the situation that we have down there. We've taken this public property and we've leased it to the lacrosse organizations, and basically we don't have to worry about now a division of lacrosse. We don't have to worry about the coaches and all that kind of stuff. They do it as an entity and organization of their own.
So if I wanted to create an organization, an organized organization, and I wanted to build a private entity in a public park and lease it, that's okay for me to do because the county doesn't have to pay for anything.
What we would do in that instance, quite frankly, is if you get the structure together and want to do a flag football group or whatever, or just the as far as a multi-purpose field, probably the thing that makes the most sense here in this instance is if that's something that you're after, and if we really do need a multi-purpose field down there, is for us to try to put something together.
Exactly, and that's what I thought the field is supposed to serve as, a multi-purpose field.
No, and the differentiation between the basketball courts and the baseball fields and the soccer or lacrosse fields are that the county maintains all the rest. Now, those are your tax dollars and my tax dollars maintaining the basketball courts and the Little League fields, unlike the ones, the lacrosse organization. So that, I hope that kind of sheds a little light to answer your question about why, with it being public property, why it's just not unfettered access.
Well, okay, I understand that aspect of it. However, what I'm still failing to understand is why is it at a public park where we had all of this access to this area and it was just taken away from us? Nobody did. Much like the Dollar General thing here, no one let the community know. If you didn't play lacrosse, you didn't know about it. We didn't have a say. We didn't have a voice. We didn't have a chance to say anything. It was just taken. And like my dad said, I thought that they were going ahead and building the multi-purpose complex, not a lacrosse field that's taken away all of the park, basically.
You know, we had great, Commissioner. We had great public debate and discussion on that. This was not something that just happened and here's the lease. There was great discussion that happened here, as with many of the public and private partnerships that have happened with your local government. If it had not been for the commitment of many of the entities that look at this opportunity, we would not have those parks. I'll give you an example. I get the Cal Ripon fields. We would not have that opportunity for the youth to be able to compete and engage in the activities if it had not been for a team and a private entity to step up to the plate to say, you have available land, you can't maintain it, you have not maintained it, we have a vision, and we now have a collaboration of a public-private partnership, and they are leased that property, and in return, that property is maintained by that private entity. And again, as Commissioner Davis said, this has happened in the North County, South County, and Midden County, because quite frankly, with 38 parks and now looking at outparcels of property that are included in those parks, we are committed to ensure positive recreation, but unfortunately the taxpayer cannot bear the burden of maintaining all those properties to that level, keep them open and maintain them and secure them to the level that you would expect. The same way as with the restrooms. The restrooms sustained just under $40,000 worth of damage. One answer to that is, okay, we have to post somebody there. Now you have salary where someone has to maintain a bathroom. I believe the bathrooms are open for the public during the daylight hours and are secured. Joe, can you answer that?
Not the lacrosse, but the...
No, the lacrosse field, no.
We have 3 sets of bathrooms out there. We have one at the lacrosse fields, we have one in the middle of the quadrant in the baseball, and we have the one out by the parking lot. The one out by the parking lot is kept open till 10 at night. The one in the quad for baseball is kept until organized. We lock it after the organized teams leave because of security reasons. But the one in the parking lot is left open, and we lock all our restrooms in every park at night because of vandalism. After I think it's about 10 p.m. that one gets locked.
Okay, but and that goes back to what I said. For us to have an open area where we practice and where the children practice is all the way in the back of the park.
Back by the playground area, which is
right.
It's behind the playground area.
We're looking. We've heard that we need to get another multi-purpose field for pickup games put in that park, and we're working at that. Right, we're looking into it right now as we speak.
Well, it's not only that. I'm still on the bathrooms. Because you're saying that the bathroom at the front entrance is always accessible. That's true. However, if you have little children that are back there practicing for pee-wee football or baseball or whatever, they cannot hold themselves to make it all the way up to the front of the park entrance to use a restroom. When you stated we have 3 restrooms available, truthfully, we only have 1 available. And that's the one at the front of the park.
And you said that one doesn't have water, but the one near... It
does not have water.
It needs to have water.
Did it get...
Yeah, we can add a water fountain. I'll look and I've written that down, and we'll look and put in water.
The only water fountains that are accessible are the ones on the lacrosse bathroom, which is...
Isn't there ones at the quad, too? When you go to the quad, there's...
Yeah, that would be...
Further away.
It's further away from the area she's talking about.
Yes.
Everything is away from the area I'm talking about. We were pushed back to the little unsafe segment here.
Do we have an area? Do we have room down there for a multi-purpose field of some kind?
We're looking at an area. Yes, we're looking at an area that's adjacent to 20th and in Oslo. There's in that corner, which we're looking at trying to put a multi-purpose,
more accessible
field.
That would also be closer to the restroom because it would be more towards the entrance off of 20th.
But before we did the lacrosse fields, we had an open area there which wasn't utilized much, and we had the same complaints about it being uneven and things like that.
Yeah.
I would hate to disagree with you, but I do, because the area was utilized quite often, not just by athletes, but by people flying kites. People, even though dogs are not supposed to be at the park, but people would come out there and walk their dogs. We would run that as an exercise. It was being utilized quite frequently.
Yeah, it was good use. My son's ball team used to practice just opening up the field.
Right. So it was being utilized quite frequently with minimal complaints. I assure you, it was much safer than where we are playing right now.
Okay.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Yes, thank you. Next, under public discussion, is a request to speak from Althea McKenzie regarding review agenda items, specifically consent agenda and commissioners' matters. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Althea McKenzie, 2405 16th Avenue, and for today's discussion, I will also disclose that I'm a candidate for County Commission, and because this matter will cross over in some territory regarding that, I will be addressing most of my questions to the left arm of the County Commission, which would be the attorney and the county administrator. Also to avoid debate regarding comments. However, if any of the county commissioners would like to clarify anything, please do so, but I would prefer not to engage in debate if that's okay with you gentlemen. Today I'm here because I had some questions regarding a motion that was passed on May 20th. and I believe the documentation is there, and I don't know if you can display it because I don't have my copy with me. But there was a motion for, a presentation was made by a gentleman from the Indian River Neighborhood Association regarding the fertilizer ordinance, and there was some discussion regarding purchase of bumper stickers. I've had some discussions with different entities in the county regarding this. At the time that the motion was passed, one of the comments that was made by one of our more popular attendants was, are you going to address them spending taxpayers' dollars on this item? And at the time, I did have a query, so I spoke with a few members of the county staff. What happened that day was a little bit unusual. There was a discussion that moved into a motion that moved into a disbursement of funds. And what happened there, from the conversations that I had, was that it was very unusual to see an activity bubble into that capacity and be passed. So with that, it still became sticky. And the situation became sticky because, as a candidate, it raised additional questions for me as far as what is the boundaries regarding this. So I got a copy of your purchase agreement, which, by the way, is a wonderful document. Reading contracts that have lines that cancel the items before is always wonderful. So in the resolution, anything from my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, is anything under $1,000 can be done without bidding. I do understand that your purchasing manager did take the initiative to check the quality of the product that was being produced and had some comparisons done, which was very proactive, even though it didn't fit within the perimeters of the request. So my concerns with this particular transaction is a little bit more layered than just the dollar purchase. The Indian River Neighborhood Association, on their legal documents, is noted as a public action, political action committee. So, again, just like bubble gum when you walk down the street in New York City gets stuck to your shoe on a hot summer day, it just felt uncomfortable to me.
Can you restate that last part?
The Indian River Neighborhood Association's corporate article papers not only serve as a special interest group to protect the integrity of Indian River County, but they are also officially listed as a political action committee.
I think they're two separate groups, but I could stand corrected. They have a PAC separate from the entity, but...
That's correct.
So
it'd be like the Gifford Economic Development Council, which is a standalone nonprofit. If they wanted to make a political contribution, they would have to form a secondary group that would be the PAC that would raise money to make political contributions. But you would still have the Gifford Economic Development Council as that standalone nonprofit.
Right. And money's not...
Yeah, they're separate accounts.
The purpose of the Indian River Neighborhood Association, as listed on their corporate articles, is that they will protect the interests of Indian River County, along with having a political action committee. I can stand corrected on that if there's someone here that would like to dispute that, and I've heard what you've said regarding different accounts. Regarding the Gifford Economic Development Council, which I am an original member, I'm sure that's why you use that as an example. The bottom line of why this became a question as far as procedures was that I am completely in support of the fertilizer ordinance and the fact that bumper stickers may raise awareness within the city. However, I was very uncomfortable with the fact that for the first time, and it may not be the first time, but everybody's kind of concluded that this is an unusual situation. A discussion was brought to the county commission, a motion was made, and a action to distribute taxpayers' dollars to support a project was authorized at that time. It was authorized, the motion approved by 2 members who are currently up for re-election. Now, there are departments of ethics outside of Indian River County where this question can be asked, and they can also look into it. Because the bottom line here boils down to, is there an ultimate benefit to an individual based on this motion that was made? So, to the county administrator and to the county attorney, who are the kind of the balancing act and also make recommendations, it is my request that should this situation not be in line with regular procedures, or the regular procedures not be in place, that it might be in your best interest to do so. And I'll give you an example, and I'll address this to Mr. Beard. Mr. Beard, you may not recall the first time you threw me out of your office, but I do. And I have a lot of Joe Beard stories, and they're all meant in good intent. But the first time I visited your office, if you recall, was in July 2008, where the county attorney's office had already given me permission to distribute flyers. Do you remember that? You yelled at me from the back of your office.
No, I don't. First of all, I don't ever remember throwing you out of my office, so...
I'm being facetious, I'm sorry,
Oh,
sir.
okay.
Well, it sounded pretty direct.
Yeah, pretty direct, so I don't ever remember. I know that, so, and I
None of
don't,
us said
I
no,
don't really,
no.
I don't recall that particular
I'm sorry, let him finish.
instance, you know, so, but you can go ahead, I mean, you can help my memory.
It's a good story, because I have many Joe Beard stories. And for the public's knowledge, Mr. Beard is one of the most reasonable people to work with, and I have worked with you many times, and we like to go toe-to-toe, and he's always taken care of the best interests of the county. I can say that bar none. It's like going through a steel gate, and that is true, and the audience will let you know that. If there's anyone who protects the interests, it is you. However, at the time, I had presented to you a flyer for a forum that I wanted to have, and it was regarding 3 candidates that were up for election. And the flyer was taken back to your office, and you said no in a very loud voice. And I said, is that a definite no? Are you still thinking about it? And that was the first time we met, because you came out of your office and you said to me, absolutely not. And the reasons that you gave me, which were very valid, was that the county was not able to take a position on political matters because you received state and federal funds, and it would be a conflict of interest to endorse candidates. So, with that said, I gave you a flyer and asked you to invite a friend, and I left. So I was not thrown out, literally. But with that in mind, and that story told, was why this situation kind of had a sticky feeling to it. Now, what would have been less sticky is, and this is my recommendation, and according to your purchase manual, it does not have to be bidded out, which is clear in Requisition Guidelines 2.3, because it's less than $1,000. The authority is no county employee has the authority to purchase or commit public funds towards the purchase of commodities or service without first complying with the appropriate requisition and procurement procedures. However, if anybody appreciates a good contract like I do, in section, let me make sure I get my stuff right here, because I know you guys love when I make a mistake. It says in section 1.3 D and E that waiver of requirements of the manual. Sweet. The board may waive the requirements of this manual when it's in best interest of the county to do so. The waiver may be made before or after completion of the procurement transaction. There's also a waiver of technicalities and irregularities. The board may waive any technicalities or irregularities relating to the compliance with the requirements of this manual when it's in the best interest of the county to do so. The waiver may be made before or after completion of the procurement transaction. So, with that said, which again is why I always appreciate a good document, because you always want to make sure you can back out of it, being in real estate. I will concede to that particular waiver along with the $1,000. However, again, I will stress, as a candidate and as a private citizen, that I do have a question mark. If I was a cartoon, there'd be a question mark with a cloud regarding that transaction. It was not clean. So what I would recommend, not that, and I'm sure someone will come up with a different recommendation, or I'm sure you guys will get together, is the next time that something like this comes about, and it is in the benefit of the county, that it be vetted through a department or given some specific instructions as to the department that will be heading it up. Because at the time of the presentation, there were some questions on the quality of the product, what it said, did it say what it was supposed to say, blah, 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 and it goes on. I have understood that since then, the bumper sticker in question has been passed around and approved, so that's fine. I'm sorry, I'm having some timers. Give me just a minute. Your purchasing manual does not address purchases under $1,000. It doesn't have guidelines. And so the question is, has this now evolved into an opportunity where small organizations that are looking out for the county's best interest or public interest, will we now be able to come to you to ask for items under $1,000 and it be granted from the DS? Will that be an opportunity for us going forward?
Because let me clarify a few things for you, since it was my matter that brought this up. First, your statement that this is highly unusual for a county commissioner to put something on the agenda that gets voted upon that might be taxpayer funds is totally incorrect. I think it's probably one of the best things about being a county commissioner is each commissioner is free to put anything he or she desires on the agenda. Unlike the school board, which has to be approved by the administrator, each commissioner here is free to put anything we wish on the agenda. And then if you get a second on your item, you actually get the privilege of a vote being taken on your item. And if you get a third vote, you actually have the pleasure of having your matter approved and passed by the commission. The fact that there was an expenditure is not unusual, because if you also look in today's agenda under Commissioner Zork's matters, he has put on there a request for discussion from the board regarding the St. Johns River Alliance request for financial support from the county. So Commissioner Zork has placed this on the agenda with the appropriate backup. At the appropriate time, Commissioner Zork will bring his matter forward. I imagine he will make a motion to see if the board wishes to approve that. If he gets a second, we will take a vote on it. And if he gets a third vote, we will approve this and staff will move it forward. So other commissioners have also added items, upwards of $100,000 for hiring consultants and attorneys for matters related to the train project. So it is not unusual at all. It's very appropriate. In the case of the bumper sticker, there was a reproduction of the bumper sticker in the backup. There was some estimated cost in the backup. It was brought forward. It was a motion, a second, and a vote to approve it and move it forward. Secondly, we are not sending any money to the Indian River Neighborhood Association. They spent the money out of their own pocket to have the artwork and the design work of the bumper sticker set up. They paid for that. All they're doing is allowing us to purchase additional bumper stickers from the printing company that makes them. So no taxpayer dollars are going to the Indian River Neighborhood Association. We are ordering directly from the printer. As you mentioned, staff did check around and found out that that price is the best price we can get, so they did their due diligence. And finally, this is not unusual either, because back when we first were discussing the fertilizer ordinance, the Scotts Fertilizer Company partnered with the county, and they contributed funds to print up a flyer that was an educational flyer that we stuffed in all of our utility bills that went out to utility residents, talking about water conservation and mowing and fertilizing and things like that as a public education opportunity. And that passed the board without any issues as well. So it's not unusual, one, for a county commissioner to put an item on his matters that ends up in a vote, that ends up in expenditures. It's not unusual at all that we partner with another group for educational items. And for you to insinuate that somehow this is unethical or wrong or anything like that, I highly object to. So thank you.
Thank you. And as I had mentioned, as I started, that I was not going to turn this into a candidate debate. What I said was unusual was the way that that transaction bubbled into a decision. Normally, when request comes through for a partnership, it is vetted through departments. If every organization in Indian River County came up and said, I need X and Y dollars, usually they are vetted through a department or directed to a process.
Okay, now that also is incorrect.
Mr. O'Brien, please let me...
Ms. McKenzie, let me correct you, because you are wrong. Our policy is that we do not have staff undertake any additional work or expenditure of taxpayer dollars unless this board has authorized it.
So these are not taxpayer dollars that you said a few minutes ago that are being used, correct?
They are, and that's why it came from a commissioner to authorize it.
But a few minutes ago you said these are not taxpayer dollars.
No, I said we are not sending taxpayer dollars to the IRNA. We are paying the printer directly. No taxpayer dollars are going to the IRNA. And it is because this is the job we do here. When a group or a member of the community has a problem, they come to us, and if we can fix it, gentlemen, we say, hey, let me put it on the agenda. If I get 3 votes, we'll fix it for you. But staff does not undertake projects unless the board has approved them.
And they're never usually vetted through a department. Again, as a candidate, this seemed a little sticky. And Mr. O'Brien, when you expound on things that I say, you tend to, I like playing back the video so we can always go back and see who said what. You have a tendency to always correct the speaker that's standing here to tell them what they should or should not say or how they should have said it. The purpose of having public discussion items is for me as an individual to express my concerns and express them. It is not for you to tell me what I should say and how I should say it. So in ending this discussion, again, my question is, which you just clarified, we can now come to the county commissioners for items under $1,000 and it can be passed for the DS. I want to make sure that's clear.
You can come for $1 million if you have a group in a need that you want to put on the agenda.
So when any other organization comes and gets vetted through a department, that is not normal procedure. That is just, it can be done right here and now. And the fact that a potential benefit may come out of it for a county commissioner is not a concern for anyone. Because it's my understanding in some items that sometimes county commissioners may need to step aside on discussing or voting on items that they may get a personal benefit from at a later time. I'll give you another example. Recently you voted on another item for the Gifford Industrial Park. At the beginning of the vote, there was some expression as to connections and whether you could vote or not, whether you were related or not. However, there were some donations made, and it's not the forum to discuss it, from that particular business owners to commissioners. My concern with this again is, as you bring items to the dais and as you vote on them and present them, to be very careful that you are not receiving a personal benefit down the road, because then that would be, to me, a conflict of interest. And since you've clarified it and it doesn't pose a conflict of interest and you won't appeal the motion, I have now felt satisfied to express my concerns. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the due diligence of your purchasing department. And you gentlemen have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a couple things. One, listening to the last words about are we free to just have a commissioner bring up anything at any time, there might have been some confusion about whether that was done under the public discussion items or done under the commissioner's matters. So I'd just like to say that that was, if a commissioner puts it on the agenda ahead of time and it's part of the agenda under his matters, then the commissioner can do what he wants. I'd like to just back up just a little bit on the more sort of philosophical side. On this item and most items, this item particularly, we did the bumper sticker. It was followed our policy of, I'm not having a debate with you, Ms. McKenzie, so I'm not expecting you're going to respond to what I'm saying.
That's fine. You're still speaking to my matter. I should stand at the podium and listen to what you have to say rather than leave the room.
Okay. Our policy is education, not regulation, so this was consistent with our policy, and just want to...
More of a philosophy, I would say, than a policy.
Well, no, it's been our policy to have education in our documents. It's in some, but it's certainly our philosophy on top of it. And this was something which came at the very beginning of the blackout period, which most people are probably still unaware of. So timeliness was a factor. And I think it was, actually I have to applaud Commissioner O'Brien for putting it on and taking advantage of what another group was doing. I'll also note that regularly we do public-private partnerships. We just discussed one under the Wiggins, a number of them under the Wiggins public matters. So we often do that. And at first I was thinking about when Mr. Baird mentioned it to me after the fact that we had the logo of IRNA and the county. I had to think about that. I wasn't sure if that was quite right, and I realized, well, heck, we do that actually all the time. And one of the places we do it is at the Lagoon Greenway. We've got the symbols of both. Yeah. And it's just another symbol of the public-private partnership. If there's any suggestion that we come up with policies against this, well, I'd say two things. Sometimes there's just a matter of time, and most people complain about government going too slowly. There has to be a time when we can actually take some proactive action without having things slowed tremendously. And the final thing, which I think is one of the most important things, is, again, I agree with Commissioner O'Brien in that it is proper for commissioners to bring these things up on their matters, because this is a very public and transparent place. And I think it's good that we bring these up in such a public, transparent environment. And there are political aspects to these things. We are politicians, after all. But this gives the citizens a chance to see us and view us and listen to both our strengths and weaknesses and our biases. And I think that's a very proper thing to do in a bureaucry, or excuse me, in a democracy. So any
that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it?
Yeah. Any suggestion that this wasn't above board or that there's just anything that we should actually address, I think, is a mistaken idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
A part of my discussion item was a consent to agenda piece of it, which I have somehow forgotten to discuss since we got wrapped up in discussion. I would like to thank Mr. Brown, who has now, from the last packet that I read, started to break out the increases on the amendments so that the public can read it in documents and not have to figure out over a period of time what has been increased and what has been decreased. And that I found very valuable because I was reading a past document, and I think in 2012 there had to be a summary that there was like $8 million additional dollars passed over a year's period in amendments. So I think that's good for the public to know as you do your quarterly statements, the increases. And I believe that was a discussion prior. Mr. O'Brien had agreed to that, and I think that was in the packet today. So thank you to Mr. Brown. Again, I appreciate the County Commission as an arena that citizens can bring their concerns and voice their concerns and make it a public arena. I also appreciate the Attorney's Office, the Purchasing Department, and the Comptroller as far as giving me information regarding this particular matter, whether it was regular, out of the ordinary. And again, those words were expressed by your staff, and that was why it was important enough for me to bring this discussion to the table. Again, it's always a pleasure, gentlemen. Have a great day.
I have one other comment. You can stay there if you'd like or not.
Okay, so I can stay.
In looking at this, I'm the shortest one that's been up here the least amount of time, but a number of other projects. One comes to mind is, and I think Chairman O'Brien may have been the one that put this one on as well, was the Paul Drittenbass's request and presentation and participation in the seagrass buoy markers at the moorings grass flats. That's another one where it was a joint, effort between a group and the commission. And I know they did the bulk of everything, and we kind of just did the icing on the cake, the last little bit at the end. But there's a number of occasions, and I can say from a commissioner, when you see somebody's name that they want to meet with you at the office, the first, I shouldn't say the first because that wouldn't be fair, probably the second or third thing that goes through their mind is how much money are they going to ask for, and they want to see if I'll put it on the agenda. Because that's what we're there for. If somebody has an idea, a request, a petition, or something, is they come in and they say, this is what I would like to do, and this is how much it would cost, and they kind of have a scrutiny from a personal standpoint of which ones do you want to move forward and which ones you don't. And the one today is one of the ones that I think there's a benefit of moving forward, but we'll see where it goes when it comes up. But there's probably, I don't want to say a countless list of participation agreements where we pay a portion, a small portion, a bigger portion on different projects that are brought forward by different community groups, nonprofits, other things, if it meets kind of the goals and objectives of what the county is trying to accomplish. So,
okay, as we wade through this, I don't want to lose focus on the purpose of my concerns. The purpose of my concern was not that this was not a good project, that it was not in the best interest of the county. My concern was that it was not vetted through a department, and that
when you use the word vetted, what does that?
Please let me finish. At this particular time, because there was some unclarity as to who was going to pay for it, from what department, and where the funds were going to be pulled from. These are discussions that I've had over the last 3 weeks regarding this. Believe me, I have spent a lot of time trying to figure out, do I bring this to the table or not? My concern was a yellow flag. Be very careful. Yes, this is a collaboration, and yes, it is in the best interest of the county. However, it is with an organization that also serves as a political action committee, and both commissioners that motioned and seconded are up for re-election. And if you can argue to say that it is not so, then we have both expressed our concerns. And if there's nothing else, I'd like to take my children to lunch.
When you say it wasn't vetted through a department, isn't the purchasing department a department, and they followed through, they looked at the product, they checked the pricing? That's kind of vetting the process in my mind.
Mr. Zork, that question was answered after I did the follow-up. So I can get into the details and go through the maze that I went through to try to get a good feeling about this. Had I got a good feeling about this, I would not be here. If I felt like, okay, everything's in order, and yeah, it's a little sticky, but it's okay, I would not have brought this up. There was no clarity on who was paying for it. Was it going to be paid on a credit card? I mean, there was a lot of discussion. So I expressed with Mr. Reingold my concerns. I expressed with Mr. Smith my concern, and I expressed my concerns with Ms. Hyde. And everybody kind of got together and made sure that everything was the way it was. What still stood out in this equation was that there was a collaboration, and that I would caution in the future that somehow you take that into consideration, especially going forward in the next month, since you gentlemen and myself are facing an election process. Is there anyone else that'd like to add? Because I'm concluded at this point.
Yeah, I think there'll be one comes through the departments probably. When we talked about the culverts, before we spend and vote on those dollars, it'll probably come through the Public Works. They'll look at it just like Joe Baird said. So I don't want you to think there's only one way to get it done also. I didn't want to just, as far as you see how that one would come back to us in a different fashion.
Through Public Works.
Right, yeah.
Right. And when the motion was made, there was no direction as to how that was going to work. Normally you give a specific department direction to follow up and follow through. In your procedures, if it's kind of left ambiguous, it is left up to the purchasing manager, and the purchasing manager did vet and go further and beyond. And the only dangling piece, again, was that one piece that I thought was important enough to bring to the public's attention.
Well, a good example of what we just did, though. I mean, we didn't tie any culverting project to the Family Dollar.
Which you should culvert 45th Street, but I let that go.
And that's why we brought it up. But at the same time, the fastest way to kill that project, and you heard it right there, is to force them to do the full culverting. And so that would add $200,000-$300,000 perhaps to the project. But it might be between the two of us, we both throw in $100,000 or something like that they're already going to do, and we do, and everybody walks away happy at the end of the day. So, but that's just a different way of it coming to us through a department. So I don't want to say that things don't get vetted before they come to us as a vote. I want you to.
That was just my recommendation, my 2 cents.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, do we want to go ahead and hear Ms. Hunt and then take a break, or is that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Ms. Hunt, would you like to come up?
I just want to thank each and every one of you. And I did want to comment on the couple that was the people that were here about that county park quickly. I've worked in upstate New York, and I've worked with families who are very wealthy, and I've helped with fundraising here, both in Florida and in New York and in Hawaii. I've seen a lot with a lot of different counties in the state of Florida. And this is just an idea to throw out there, and I'm sorry the people left that were speaking about the county. When vandalism happens, it affects all of us, all taxpayers. And it might behoove maybe the commission to think about this, but I know Cocoa Beach did, and I know down in Fort Pierce area, they had the kids, communication's everything. The gentleman that stood up here and spoke about that, because there's too much room for miscommunication. So what Family Dollar Tree, what I just saw here, was awesome. You know, communicating with that community and what's going on with that store. But with that being said, maybe, you know, not all kids are raised, and we're looking at different generations. My parents were married 60 years. That's very uncommon. You know, I was raised right from wrong, and not all families are raised that in this generation right now. So what I'm saying is in Cocoa Beach, they did a children's project where they reached out to the community. These kids are talented artists, and sometimes, you know, the graffiti they do, it's totally inappropriate, especially with certain language that, as a lady, you're not supposed to use. But maybe reaching out to the community with this lady that was just here that just spoke, and her dad, maybe reaching out and asking the kids, hey, you know, the $40,000 in bathrooms that damage, you guys want to have restrooms. The bottom line is, you know, maybe somebody can donate some paint and they can do a nice mural. In Cocoa Beach, they did a gorgeous mural, and the kids had so much fun doing it. And show a little respect that, yes, it's a bathroom, it's public use, but the bottom line, it's just a suggestion. You know, it's sometimes when you show a little bit of love to kids who are a little bit less fortunate, it goes a long way. So just a little idea. The reason why I'm really here today is I want to thank each and every one of you for helping me get public access to my court records, which is still not done yet. And I want to address this to the county attorney specifically. But I do want to thank each and every one of you because you are public officials. And the open door policy, when I've come to speak, with Mr. O'Brien, Commissioner O'Brien. I appreciated your time, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I think your job is tough, and I think in politics, believe me, I wouldn't want to be involved because you're never going to please everybody. You know, you do the best job you can. You're in the public's eye, and as Warren Buffett said, don't do anything you wouldn't want published on the front page of a newspaper. You know, if you lead your life that way, you lead a good life. Rule 2516, which I plan on going to Tallahassee and speak about. Not everybody in the state of Florida with this mortgage foreclosures, and I'm using mortgage foreclosures because this is going on nationwide across the United States. Not everybody can afford an attorney. Because I came here to fly airplanes, and I'm a pilot, and I worked very hard for my aviation license. I had a goal to be a commercial pilot. My goals have changed now, and because of what has happened. When I had this accident, which has been severely interfered with both my flying and due process, I've learned a lot about law. I've spent a lot of years reading law books. I'm not an attorney, and I will state right now I'm not quoting or giving legal advice or practicing law without a license. I do not do that. I was representing myself because the Florida Bar ACAP right now has been interfered with a process of an investigation with 3 attorneys that were on my case. And I'm not going to get into the details of my case, but the bottom line is this has been severe injuries I have incurred. And I have myself and other individuals went with the clerk of court asking for, back in December 20th, 2012, where we had a meeting, and if the clerk of court, Mr. Smith, was here, I would confront him face to face. We had a meeting because there was a problem with public access to court records. Now, one of my concerns is there should be the video cameras, and I have traveled around the state of Florida while this was going on with an FAA flight school case with predatory lending, way before your mortgage fraud started in the state of Florida. I have tried to meet with congressmen, senators. I have now basically met with families who are opening those doors, and I am planning on being an advocate for people who have been denied their due process, especially in this county. And the bottom line is Rule 2516 clearly states it's for attorneys. When people come in, we know this e-filing for lawyers. A lot of attorneys had a lot of problems with it. The courts are understaffed. They're overworked. We understand that. If it took a week to get the files to pull out, that's fine. But judges, there are deadlines. When they want something, they want something. They don't want continuances. That you're an attorney. You understand how this works in courts. I have had to go before federal court. And federal judges are a lot tougher than state county judges. But when people are going to actually try to get their due process, which my father served in the military, and I respect the military people of this country who fought for our due process and our constitutional rights. When people come in and try to get access to court records, cannot get the files, cannot access the computers, Rule 2516 is not equal due process to any pro se litigant. You cannot go on the computers. The computers are not set up. They are not accessible to the public. And not everybody can afford a $200,000 attorney or shell out $20,000. I have been through a horrible situation. And the reason why I'm standing up, and I appreciate you guys taking the time with this, because I was getting lots of games from the clerk of court, myself and several pro se litigants. Now, the reason why I'm really here right now is the sheriff's department is an elected official. Now, I'm not in politics, and I didn't come here to take on any of this. But I would like to know exactly, because I've sent letters to Governor Rick Scott, I've sent letters to Office of Open Government, and I've actually spoken to Office of Open Government, Jessica, yesterday, who will submit her paperwork in my letter to her supervisor. I'm well aware of dealing with state and federal laws, and there's a lot of red tape, especially with the FAA. But what I'm stating here right now is that I have been falsely accused of something going into a courthouse, my due process to have access to records to an attorney who appeared and demonstrated to be mentally unstable at the time. I was up north burying my father, okay? I had to come back here, and instead of being able to be with my family to mourn and help my mother and my 3 sisters deal with a death in the family, this county didn't even have the human decency at this courthouse. When the case got reversed and I actually had to go in with a summary judgment with no court files, no evidence, no nothing, and then the judge reverses the decision. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole case.
Ms. Hunt,
but
Ms. Hunt, could you get to your specific
the specific
issue? Yes,
issue
please.
is every county courthouse has security cameras, just like this is on camera right now. Every county courthouse and every federal. That is to protect and serve. That is what the law enforcement that I was raised and taught children is to protect and serve. When people walk into a courthouse and are denied access to public court records, and this has been going on since 2012, gentlemen, not recently, and I'm not the only one. When we've asked for public access to court records and we haven't gotten it, the cameras, now I have actually sent certified letters to the Sheriff's Department asking for the video surveillance tape inside this courthouse not to be moved, altered, or destroyed, or it will be considered expoliation evidence. You have a lieutenant who's running that courthouse, Lieutenant Mullinex. He literally has falsified a police report, and these are federal. He has actually obstructed justice in 3 higher court cases of mine.
Okay, Ms. Hunt, again, what is your specific request?
My specific question is, and my specific request is, the sheriff is an elected official. Who do I need to go to get copies of these video surveillance tapes that are supposed to be working at all times? Because cameras do not lie. And when I walk into a courthouse and try to get access to my records, and I have a sheriff come running up screaming in a fit of rage and yelling at me.
Okay, so your question is how do you get access to the courthouse tapes?
Since 2012,
Okay.
November 30th, 2012, December 20th, 2012. Wait one second.
I don't need to know all the dates right now.
Well, March 27th, 2013 is very important, along with September 11th and 12th. That would be when one of the clerk of courts removed evidence out of the court file and now has kept it loose in the file and moved it from 2 separate files. You know, those are...
All right, Ms. Hunt. Dylan, do you know the answer to that question, or can you research that and get back to Ms. Hunt and answer her question?
Because I would like to know who I need to contact, because I've contacted the governor and I've contacted the office of the
Ms.
governor.
Hunt. I would be happy to review that issue. I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head right here on the dais. But I'd be happy for you to call my office.
Okay.
We can chat about the allegations that you've made. I can certainly try to figure out if those videotapes are available or not. There's certainly obviously public records law issues and the like that may be implicated, but I'd be happy to talk to you about the issue and meet with you about it.
Okay,
Would
those
that be
requests
helpful?
were made within 30 days of each videotape. And at this point in time, the fact that I've been falsely accused and falsely been trespassed in the courthouse when I have court cases pending, I have an attorney now. But
Okay, well, if you're represented by counsel, I'd be happy to talk to your counsel about the issue.
okay, I have literally an attorney for my accident case, and I am in the process of meeting with a criminal attorney because I work for families. I get custody of people's children. I get fingerprint and background check. I just last summer had custody of a father who served in Afghanistan.
Okay, Ms. Hunt, Ms.
Stop,
Hunt.
please.
Yeah.
To have a trespassing in a public courthouse building is a violation of federal law. I'm not even starting with state laws here, gentlemen. I would like, and I'm not going to ask one more time, is to find out who exactly is in charge over the sheriff to get the access of these video surveillance tapes. Because if I don't get them and they are destroyed, the Sheriff's Department, if they want to continue to aid and abet Lieutenant Mullinex, then they're going to be looking for, it's not, I have been more than patient, more than kind. We're talking 2012. We are now in 2014.
Ms. Hunt, this is the first we've heard about this, though, so let us try to do our job,
Okay.
please.
No, and I appreciate it. But you have to understand, when somebody falsely accuses somebody of something
I've
and
been there.
interferes with court cases, federal cases, and a Supreme Court case now.
And I can't...
I have been,
I
this
can't-
officer
Hold
should
on,
not be
please.
serving.
I can't help you with this. All I can do is put you in the right
Okay.
direction, and I want to help you out. Because
Okay.
if
I appreciate
it's
it.
something simple...
I really do.
Hopefully we can find it, I mean, like you're talking about. But to answer your question, so we can go ahead and move on out of fairness to other people that follow the
Okay.
protocol to get on the agenda properly.
Sure.
We need to go ahead and let our legal counsel get with you and handle that and answer your question.
Well, the Sheriff's Department's had several letters within the 30 days. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Go ahead and take a brief break and come back with departmental matters.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Joe, a couple things. All right.
starfish I saw were, I did not actually get in the water, so I saw some at the sea life center in Seward, which was actually quite lovely. It was a really small sea life center, but it was solely focused on local critters. So it was all, but they had great stuff in there. Their bird sanctuary was just fantastic. Yeah. But it was just this open area where they were flying and swimming, and you could watch them go down, in the water, but it was just kind of all enclosed, but you weren't separated by them, so they could be walking along, right here, just kind of going, oh, hey, no, and jump in. That was really cool. Yeah. But that was the only, yeah. Okay, it was nice. We saw like a little. That was in the Sea Life Center. And then actually a really cool video. Quickly before the insanity begins again. Congregate where? Pier 39, of course I remember. But yeah, we saw just lots of, fantastic stuff. Giving that some fun little easy hiking. My pictures make it look like I've summited some huge mountain. And then, yeah, we had some flowers starting to pop up. This is the forget-me-not. Just their state flower and the basis for the coloring. Oh, although it's not easy to see, that's actually a bear in the tree. It was just one, yeah. Took a tour of the state capitol, just kind of going through that stuff here.
all right?
Good morning. We'll come back to order. We will start with departmental matters, community development, consideration of consultant selection committee ranking and recommendation on the economic development positioning proposals. Memorandum dated June 2nd, 2004. Good morning, Stan. Again.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Last November, the Board of County Commissioners approved a request from the Economic Development Council to go out and hire a consultant and to develop an economic development positioning plan, and the board indicated they would fund it up to $75,000. And so then county community development staff and chamber staff were tasked with coming up with an RFP. We did that, came back, and the board did approve that, as well as the EDC. They recommended approval of the RFP. And that RFP was just a little bit different maybe than some of the other ones. We had deliverables and tasks and so forth for carrying out the economic positioning, but we also invited proposers to recommend any changes to the scope, any adjustments that they had, and to break down each task, cost them out, and to break it down into 2 phases. And so the RFPs were done that way, broken down to a first phase for the positioning itself and a second phase for branding and marketing. Going through the process that purchasing was in charge of, 12 qualifying firms made proposals. The selection committee convened and looked at all 12 proposals. That committee involved myself, Jason Brown, Jay Hart, Beth Mitchell, and Helene Castletine. Shortlisting was done to 3 firms. 80 Voltage was the number 1 firm at the shortlisting stage, and after the interviews, 80 Voltage was the unanimous choice as well among the selection committee. In fact, every member of the selection committee had the exact same ranking for all 3 firms. 80 Voltage proposed some changes to the scope, same basic deliverables, but had some, we thought, some pretty smart ideas that made sense. And so the committee was impressed with their changes to the scope, and if they're selected, we would come back to you all with a scope that would have some of their suggested changes in it. Again, the task at hand is broken down into 2 phases. Phase 1 is the community input, the data analysis, and the positioning plan. 80 Voltage came back at a price of $80,000, as well as some optional tasks that the board may or may not be interested in, and then a phase 2 for the branding and marketing with a different price there. The selection committee felt that it would probably make sense for the Board of County Commissioners to approve the $80,000 for the positioning plan task itself. Any other optional tasks or phase 2 tasks, it might make sense for that to be handled by the private sector with the chamber coordinating that, but to do the planning process through the county itself. So staff's recommendation is that the board approve the consultant selection committee ranking and authorize staff to negotiate for the phase 1 tasks up to $80,000, starting with the first firm, the highest ranked firm. I do want to say that if you all do approve that or a similar motion, we plan on coming back to you next week with the contract. I also wanted to state that Helene Castletine is here if you have any questions of her. She has quite a bit of familiarity with the firms involved and the number 1 firm in particular. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
No, I just wanted to. I kind of Googled the short list of people, and it's the one that's the highest rank. Actually, as part of their business services that are listed is economic positioning, and I didn't really find that as a dominant area of expertise in some of the other ones. So I think this firm definitely seems to have a good handle on how to accomplish this task, and can probably, I think we should probably be open during the process that they may come up with some other good suggestions or ideas that we might want to look at moving forward at a future date. But I think they're very well qualified and have the expertise to do a good job for us.
Thank you. Helene, did you?
Just real quick, to the best of have we ever done anything similar to this?
Not exactly.
No.
I mean, we've certainly done economic development planning, but this positioning process is looking at a number of things: strengths and weaknesses, how to promote the strengths, how to get a competitive advantage, with those strengths, how to compensate for weaknesses that we might have, and it's really to put ourselves in position and what to focus on. And I think this is probably a better, more focused task than we've done in the past.
And just with our anything that we do have, it'd be kind of like we should have something. Now, granted, not a positioning, but we should have some things that as we put together this positioning piece, it'd be interesting to see the data that they come up with and go back and look and just see where we were. And it would do two things. One, it would probably help line us up better, I think, with our perhaps some of our economic development goals, comp plans, that kind of things that we're doing, or having Chamber being the people in charge of it. I think it'd just be good to be able to just say, okay, yeah, we were on the right track. The consultant says this, and back here when we were doing X, Y, and Z, we knew that a long time ago, and here's what we're going to do about it today, though.
Right, and I think that's one of the end results of this is to realign things where it needs to be realigned and keep going where we're already going in the right direction.
Having sat in on many of the economic discussions, as we all have, and again, it's a non-empirical science, and there's a whole lot of opinion there as to what we can do and shouldn't do, and what we did last year, maybe. But the bottom line is, it's all about where we've gone right and where we've gone wrong and what we can do better. With that said, this all came about with a discussion with Helene and Penny talking to another individual that said, quite frankly, you don't have a scorecard. And I don't think that we have anything that we could use a barometer as where we've gone, other than to be able to stand up and say we've gone through the most difficult economic times, but we could have done better. I think this will give us a better indicator, and I want to thank Helene and Penny for engaging with the process and bringing it forward.
Thank you. Helene?
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And thank you. We appreciate your consideration this morning. Commissioner Davis, in answer to your question, no, nothing like this has been done previously in Indian River County. And in addition to the things that Stan had mentioned and the things that you all have mentioned just a minute ago, one of the other things I think will be important for us to learn as we go through this process is they'll be interviewing key community leaders internally and externally to see what the perception is of Indian River County, Vero Beach, Sebastian Fellsmere as a place to do business. So not just our local business leaders, but those outside of the area, outside of Florida perhaps, to see what the perception is and how we can, if it's not a good perception, what changes do we need to make that a better place. So that's one of the other things I think this will bring out as well. And I will just mention that 80 voltage, I had an opportunity to see Janet 80 last week when I was at a conference. She and I had breakfast together last week. She's very excited to begin working with Indian River County. And it is a very well-respected and well-known firm across the country in economic development circles. So I think we're very
Just out of pure
fortunate.
curiosity, to start the process, did you ask her why?
Why what?
Why was she so excited to work with Indian River County?
Well, she had been here before.
Okay.
A couple of years ago when Enterprise Florida did their positioning analysis, Enterprise Florida went community to community to interview key leaders within each county, and Janet was part of that study as well.
Did Voltage do their positioning?
Not the entire, they were only just a small component, but she's been here before, so she's real excited to come down here again and meet with us again.
And my guess is with the weather and being from Minnesota, when it's 30 below up there, they'll really be excited about being down here.
Come December and January, perhaps.
I can see why she's so excited there. We do have a lot of unbranded brands here in Indian River County. We do have a lot to offer. Oftentimes looking at the marketing and advertising from other jurisdictions, you say, wow, why didn't we think of that? Or why could that not be here? Well, we perhaps don't have that type of branding here in Indian River County, but we will have that as a product of this effort. And in addition, there will be a lot of things identified that we might not be just taking for granted. We need to promote and then have a positive draw in the community.
And as was also mentioned just a moment ago, 80 Voltage will also look at some of the previous studies that have been conducted here in Indian River County. We put that in our scope of services. The studies that were done by Polycom, for example, Bill Fruth, they'll take those and maybe work from there as their base.
So, and with this being a county project, exactly, did we delineate very much? For example, our municipalities, they're really as much of, if not more of a significant economic engine when you've got, obviously Piper, and then you've got what the Felsmere's ambitions are, and then Sebastian and as well as Vero. How are they going to incorporate that, or what's the plan with this being a county project?
That's opening into the process itself. The Community Leaders Summit and the perception surveys, we're going to make sure that the municipalities participate in that, certainly invite them to, ask them, key people that they know of from different municipalities to be interviewed, that sort of thing, so they get input into the process basically all the way through, because it is countywide.
Right. And to also answer that, Helene and I visited with each of the municipalities, kind of giving the heads up, this is going to be coming. Okay. Be prepared to be interactive, and also if there's a key business person in their community that they want to designate to be one of the interviewees, to be thinking about who might that be. On the phase 1 task, you'll see it's on our page 133. There's also an area of at least 70 interviews, government officials, business leaders, etc. When Bill and I went back and forth on how to come up with a number, I think I started with 100 and he was at about 50, and we kind of looked at, well, if you took each municipality and they were interviewed, that's 5 people, Indian River Shores, Sebastian, Fellsmere, Orchid, whether they all will actually participate or not, but we've given the invitation to. Then you have the county commissioners, and I'd like to see if there's also a way where, I know I have 3 particular people, I would like to have somebody pick their brain, somebody smart like these people are, to see what can be gleaned from that. I don't know how we can look at submitting names as the commissioner, since we're paying the bill. If you take all those, we're still way under the 70 number. Is, each of us come up with, here's 3 particular people, and I bet you out of all of us, some of them are going to be overlapping, so it's not going to be the total, it's not going to be 15, it's probably going to be 10, because some of us are going to pick the same folks.
Would it be appropriate, and we haven't even approved this yet, so I don't want to go too much into it, but could it be like organizations or corporations versus an individual?
It could be anybody that's beneficial.
Okay.
Because, it's not excluding anybody.
Yeah. All right. For example, just to have like Felsmere joint venture be a part of it, and there'd be 2 or 3 players in there when you get to something that size, or perhaps even Piper versus it just being Simon Caldecott. You'd want 2 or 3 people in there perhaps versus just the CEO.
And as Stan had mentioned, we will be early on. We'll be convening a community leaders summit, and as I'm sure you might remember, the chamber has been doing those for a number of years now, and we've got a list of invitees of about, probably 125 people, yourselves included, as well as the elected officials at each of our municipalities. So they will all be part of the process. Absolutely.
I think that this just has to be brought out so far and wide. I think we can go back about 20 years, and when you picked up a local paper, you saw 3 industries on the top of that paper and their symbol. And one was Dodgetown, and one was Piper, and one was Citrus. And, thank you, Piper. We have, I think we have about 835 positions active there now. And they're still up on the big board on top of that paper. However, the other 2 have met with some challenges, and we now have regrouped. Things have changed, and there might be even more to add into those symbols. So again, things that we've taken for granted when we said, well, I come from Vero, I come from Indian River County, and people referred to Citrus or the Dodgers or Piper. That was basically what you can refer to about us. And there is a whole lot more, and we anticipate to see more horizons brought out and diversification and a lot more excitement in the world of economics.
Commissioner Davis?
Does this lead into a site selection process?
It could.
Is that, because I'm looking at the website here, and so I'm assuming then if if we were to move forward with this, they would have all the information, so then we go into the site selection process. And I'm assuming, let me ask you this, we had 3 site selection people down here probably, 3 years ago? And were they with this firm by chance, or was it somebody?
No, it's a different, that was a different company.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that's key there is obviously they have expertise in site selection. They're familiar. They've done work in Florida, but they're coming with a pretty fresh outside view as well, which we think is probably a good idea. So they'll be able to look at it from a site selector's viewpoint. So we think that has some merit.
Great.
Commissioner Zork?
And I think going back to, it was probably about a year ago at the EDC thing when I said, when we wanted more money, but I said, well, if we could come up with something specific that we could move forward, and then to have the sample, the 2 companies that kind of gave us a concept of how something like this might work and moving it through the process. And so it's nice to see it finally coming around to being awarded to somebody and seeing what the results come from it.
And I hate to, one last question, if I could. Just what other communities local around us, or as far as counties, have done something like this? Are we ahead of the curve, behind the curve, or about with the pack?
I don't recall any other Florida communities. There have been other areas around the country. Southern Ohio, I think, was one example that this particular firm cited.
Okay.
And as I said, they had worked with Enterprise Florida when they did their positioning analysis a couple of years ago. Is there a Panhandle community, perhaps?
Yes, I think that's correct.
Yeah, but there have not been very many communities in Florida that have pursued this.
Okay, great.
So that, I think, gives us a unique advantage.
Good. Mr. Johnson, did you have a comment?
Bob Johnson, Crowan Subdivision. Will the result of what we're doing in this proposal
raise the gas tax?
For instance, will it result in an end product like filling up the vacant parcels at CBS Industrial Park? In other words, we've spent $1 million of the taxpayer money, and I drive out there and I see weeds and growing, road deteriorating, signs falling down, and it doesn't give a very good example of what we're trying to promote. And that industrial park is one of the premier sites that CBS uses, and they may have leads of people that want to come in to fill up that industrial park. But I think we ought to, it seems like, include the CBS Industrial Park as part of the major project that we're working to fill up. I mean, even the company that was there before that went under, they marketed, I think, these places. So I think that would be probably have a lot of documentation around on their what they did. But, so anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Commissioner Davis?
Bob, it's bigger than just the CVS or the vacant land in front. I mean, you remember we had a unanimous support for expanding the urban service boundary on about 400 acres out there behind that. So,
right.
And that's zoned commercial and industrial specifically for more type of that product. So I think that quite frankly, is at least a third of the reason why we're doing this.
Right. Yeah, it's a good move. Thank you.
Gentlemen, the staff recommends that we move forward with negotiations with the top-ranked firm for a project price of $80,000, which is $5,000 above the original approved amount.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis for staff recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Clean, Stan, thank you. Next on the agenda is with great pleasure, pride, that we'll introduce this item. And this is the Office of Management and Budget, the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for fiscal year 2013-2014. memorandum dated June 2nd, 2014. And Jason Brown, the Budget Director, welcome.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Pardon me. For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director. Today I have with me Kristen Daniels and Ruth Bomarito, and just wanted to make a brief presentation on the county's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. For the 23rd year in a row, we have received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association, who's our professional association and grand poobah of government accountants, and we're very proud of that award. I will say that about 1,300 local governments received this award, and there are nearly 40,000 general purpose local governments in the country, 3,000 counties, roughly about 30,000 cities and towns. So that's already kind of rarefied air there. 1,300 out of almost 40,000. So that's about the top 4% of the governments there. And the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award is good recognition of the things we're doing. There are four main things that they're looking for. The budget document serves as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. And it's really about detailing the budget, covering all those different things. You can look in the budget document and see, okay, what does the animal control department do? What is the engineering department about? And kind of conveys that to the public, the citizen, and it's a very good program. But this year, as I said, we got 23 years under our belt for the award. There are two areas where GFOA has special recognition, and this year, for the first time, we won the special recognition for performance measurement. Performance measurement, I think, is very important. Governments are not like private sector businesses in the fact that sometimes it's hard to determine your performance. If you've got a restaurant and you're not putting a good product out on the table, you'll know it soon because you'll be out of business as that restaurant. Government doesn't really have that as much, so it's a little bit more of a challenge to manage to determine what your performance is and try and improve that. So performance measurement is very important. I will say that of those 1,300 governments that received the budget award, only 29 received this special recognition. So that's the top 2% of the top 4% there in my mind. I wanted to bring Kristen and Ruth here today because they have been instrumental in this. They were really the driving force in getting this. They said they want to go for this and we're going to make all these improvements. And I was the reluctant one. I said, oh yeah, that'll good luck. You can do it. It's a good goal to try for, but that's really a long haul, and I was really impressed that we got it, and I want to give them special recognition of our special recognition because they were really the driving force in getting it done. Of course, we had a lot of help from the county departments and cooperating with us, and from our office as well, and county administrator and the support from the commission. Always appreciative, but I wanted to bring these two here today because they're really the reason it happened, and I think this is a high watermark for us in the budget. And so, with that said, I'll stop talking.
In brief, they did all the work.
They did all the work and more. They were the driving force in taking us to that next level and raising the bar.
Thank you, team.
Commissioner Davis?
Just first of all, very, very good job. Anytime we have get the kind of professional accolades, to be judged by your peers and to be able to get those accolades is to be commended, really. And so, with that said, on the special recognition, you said, is there special performance measures recognition? Is there, I dare say, is there like more of those or something like? I don't know, gold seal, or I mean, what's next after this? Because I don't mean to put the pressure on, but okay.
There is the bumper sticker purchasing.
We're working up our policy on that one. There are two areas where GFOA offers this. One is in the performance measures, also is in the capital. So there's two areas. Maybe we can go for that one. We're always looking for continuous improvement.
So you said the capital.
For capital.
Yeah, but I think we wreck that one every time. We can't blame those bad budget decisions on y'all.
But and Jason, if you really want to give Ruth and Kristen some special recognition, you could have told them they could have stayed home until 11:30 and not have to sit through the first 2.5 hours here. That seemed almost like punishment for what they've achieved.
I think it's an experience in civic engagement.
I think they were sitting there going, we're not going to do this again. Mr. Sly, I didn't see a spreadsheet there, but I'm sure there's one somewhere.
I know, to fight that lack, I do want to congratulate you and tell you that I'm already looking forward to the next budget document.
Jason and Ruth and Kristen, thank you very much. We're very proud of this, and I think it just goes to show from the earlier discussion today that the budget department makes sure that everything we do up here is above board and straightforward and transparent, and getting these kind of awards, I think, just emphasizes that. So thank you all for your very hard work. We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. Moving on to county attorney matters. The first item is a code enforcement board orders for Maurice Rowley and Livingston Rowley, 4402 35th Avenue and 4415 34th Court. Memorandum is dated June 4th, 2014. Mr. DeBrawl, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Mr. Maurice Roll was referred to our office a couple of weeks back concerning a code enforcement problem at the two properties. That you can see coming up on your screen. One of the properties, the 34th Court property, is here and highlighted. The other property that we're talking about is kitty corner to it there on 35th Ave. You can see 45th Street is at the top, just to kind of give you a location of the properties. There had been outstanding code violations, junk, trash, and debris, parking commercial vehicles on the properties. Those have since been resolved. Mr. Roll came to us because he's under somewhat of a time constraint. There are outstanding taxes that are due on the property.
June 17th.
It is due for tax sale on the 17th. So in order to take care of the tax liabilities that are there, he also has to take care of the code enforcement before anyone would offer him any sort of financial assistance as far as the property is concerned. So what staff is asking here is to have the board set the fines to an amount certain so that they may be resolved, and then Mr. Roll can go ahead and pay the back taxes on the property and get title to the properties cleaned up. He is here as an heir to the properties, and he is represented by Mr. Joe Paladin. So staff recommendation is to set the fine certain and proceed from there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Paladin?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting Entitlement, and I represent the Roll family. As soon as the Roll family hired me and made me aware of this, within 2 days we brought both pieces of property in compliance with code enforcement and followed through with everything that they needed to do to meet that compliance. What staff was recommending in code meeting with Roland Du Bois and Stan Bowling was to let us pay an administrative cost and let them pay the back taxes so we can get the property cleaned up and free and clear. Maurice is the heir to both pieces of property from his parents who passed on. And, you know, this is part of what we want to do in life. We want to leave something for our kids behind, and this will keep it in the family and keep it here for another generation. And Maurice showed, you know, all the intent of being a good property owner by bringing us into compliance so quickly. And you know, this is why I'm representing him. This is why I believe in him. And I would ask you all to go along with what the staff has recommended, drop those fines and give me an administrative cost. And the only other thing I would ask is that we have two pieces of property, basically, the same heir, you know, the same owner. And we have the same violation that were reflected on both pieces of property. So we basically brought this through the system and cleaned up both pieces of property at the same time. I'd ask that you combine those two pieces of property as one administrative cost, because it was basically all handled at one time, and give me a little more help for the Roll family, that the county would still be reimbursed for all their costs and what have you, and make that a single administrative cost instead of separate administrative costs. It's the same function throughout. In other words, instead of an administrative cost, I see Dylan looking at me kind of confused. Instead of an administrative cost for each lot separately, combine them because they're both handled at the same time through the same issue. I would ask you to help me a little bit with that and give me one administrative cost to help the family. They got to pay the back taxes that'll be coming into the county coffers besides the administrative cost. And this is all part of what we believe in here. And in respect to Mr. Bob Slary, who usually has a good quote from one of the old presidents, and he made me learn about the Smoot-Hawley Act a few years ago. I have a quote from the president, too. President Kennedy was one of the presidents I admired, and he said that America will never realize its true greatness until we reestablish the family unit. This is part of reestablishing the family unit by keeping the family here in Indian River County that started here. So I ask you to give me that little bit of help and vote on this so we can go forward and pay those taxes and keep the same family owning the property. Thank you. Any questions?
I'm just amazed that you were able to wiggle Smoot-Hawley into this unrelatable concept as has been done in the past.
Well, Mr. Slary kept me up for 3 nights studying it.
I just hope that you understand it better than some of my fellow commissioners. That's
I think I do. Thank you.
I'll give Joe Baird permission to throw him out.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Fleischer?
I see that Roland is here. Could we ask Roland a question or two?
Sir, I'm Roland DuBois, Chief of Environmental Planning and Code Enforcement.
Roland, thank you. You've been aware of this case from the inception, and I know that you have worked with the consolidation of the efforts. Is what Mr. Palin is saying true that, in fact, I'm not doubting, it is true that within a few days mitigation took place and it was self-initiated?
Our records show that one of the 2 properties was actually complied a while ago, but the other property was, in fact, cleaned up soon after Mr. Paladin got involved.
And when you had response did you have response with the owners of the property or the heirs of the property?
No. When a property is cleaned up, it's essentially, if we notice it, as staff notice it in the field, we'll note that in our record too, that it's resolved at a certain date. Otherwise, it's the burden of the property owner to let us know when it comes into compliance.
So
in this case, both these cases date back to 2009. One was cleaned up in our records as of in early 2010, but the other one was not resolved until this recent April, which is when Mr. Paladin got involved on that particular property.
And it has been a kind of a current history that when older individuals own property and they've gone to let go a little bit when they are sold or heired to family members, that there is a certain amount of recovery to take place?
Yeah, typically, if this had gone to the code board, what staff would typically recommend is the starting point would be to look at administrative costs, which we've calculated for these 2 cases, and then based on the individual circumstance, whether there should be some amount beyond administrative costs. In this case, we have a standardized approach to what administrative costs are based on the length of the process for bringing this case through the code board, and based on our estimates, that's where we came up with the 2 administrative cost estimates for each of these 2 cases. We're supporting that it be just set at administrative costs for each of the 2 cases. What we calculate is $2,000 administrative costs for one of the properties and $1,700 for the other, just based on the process that took place when this went to the code board.
And we know that both parcels are now currently owned by the same individual?
They're both owned by the Rawl family. One is a...
Well, family.
Basically, yeah.
And they both kind of came in compliance together, and now are we 100% clear with the properties?
Yes, they're currently both completely in compliance.
And nothing pending?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Slaughter?
Roland, from the time frame you mentioned, it seemed like most probably one guy came before code enforcement at one date, and was addressed at another date, but that the dates for the second property was probably a different beginning and a different termination. Is that roughly correct?
Well, both cases, they're two different catty-corner nearby properties. They both came to the board during the same time frame, which was in 2009.
Yeah, same time frame or same time?
According to the backup, the fine started for both on the same date, July 25th, 2009.
Right. Both fines were imposed on the same date, so I believe they did come forward at the same time.
Yeah. But you said that one was resolved at one date and one was resolved at a different date.
Right. They both were resolved after it went to the code board, the fine was imposed, and then sometime in the future, one of them came to compliance, and then the other came into compliance in the future, but a longer time
What
after.
I'm trying to understand is this really a twofer, as I understood Mr. Paladin suggest that the administrative costs were really no more than the cost for the one, as opposed to two separate processes and two separate procedures where you would have a cost for the first and a cost for the second.
I think it's somewhere in between. You had two properties owned by the same owners.
There you go.
When staff went to visit the property to inspect, they're looking at one, the other one's right next door to it. But we did have separate case administration costs for bringing each forward separately. Notices to different owners, because technically they're the same family, but different individuals of the family. So there could be some meshing of the costs from that perspective, but on the other hand, it's not completely just get rid of one cost and go with one.
Okay,
so if there was going to be some flexibility to be considered, it might be somewhere in between the two costs combined. There might be some flexibility there.
Sort of answer the next question, which would have been, would that meshing that you're discussing be reflected in the 2017 numbers, or is that something that is up for the commissioners to do?
I think if you go by the standard approach we take, your total amount of the two combined is $3,700. If you want to take in consideration that some of that occurred simultaneously with some inspections that were close to being the same inspection, I think you back down from the $1,700, it would be no less than the $2,000. So I think you're looking at a range. If you're looking at trying to give some flexibility of combining the two, it would be between $2,000 and $3,700 if you're looking at administrative costs.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Slurry, you want to take the 2,000 and then half of the second one?
Yeah, I was going to say 3,000. Does that seem to cover all your costs fully?
That would be a reasonable approach.
Okay, I'm just going to make the motion for the $3,000.
Okay. We have a motion to reduce the code enforcement fines to $3,000.
I'll second that, but just for future knowledge, Dylan, with this going through the tax deed process, I'd like to know what happens to a municipal lien that's like utilities, as well as a code enforcement lien after the the tax deed auction. See if they're treated any differently specific. I would imagine the utility doesn't go away, but I don't know what. I mean, we might be arguing over nothing here if we don't go ahead and help this gentleman out. But I don't know.
And I had that question too, because my understanding was for a tax deed sale, all outstanding liens have to be prepaid. So would somebody have to come in and prepay these liens before it goes to the sale?
Yes. They would need it, not before it goes to sale. Anybody that would purchase the property, the liens go along with the property. The governmental liens stay following.
They survive the tax deed sale.
That's correct.
So probably nobody would even really bid on these things. I mean,
yeah, the person that owns the tax deed or the tax certificates that applied for the tax deed would bid up to their credit amount just to get the property back, and then they would come back for us after they extinguish the rights of the current owners, and then beg us for a $3,000 discount.
What usually happens in unsuspecting folks that come to a tax deed sale and buy a property that's encumbered by a governmental lien like a code enforcement lien, they just perpetuate the same thing by not paying the taxes and allow it to go to a tax deed sale, and sooner or later it just cheats back to the county. So what we're doing here today is probably truncating the whole procedure and just trying to get the property back on the tax rolls.
It does seem counterproductive or counterintuitive that a code enforcement lien specifically wouldn't be cleansed. I mean, I understand a mortgage I understand a utility, but you would think a code enforcement would go ahead and get that haircut to where it can get back on the tax rolls.
Well, one other concept just to throw out, just as a caveat, is obviously if there's more money left, if there's money left over, then obviously the tax collector sends it over to us and says, hey, I saw you had a lien on there. Here, this goes off, pays off your code enforcement lien, or here's what goes to pay off your municipal lien.
Yeah.
You know, one of the problems we've been having here in this county, because I've bought several pieces of property also since we've had the downturn, along with owning several pieces before the downturn. People aren't even buying the property for the tax. They're not paying the back taxes to buy the property. So this does two things. Morally, it keeps this property in the family, which is my issue. And financially, it pays the back taxes and pays the cost that the county incurred in going forward with this. So it's a win-win situation for both people, and we don't have to worry about the other legalities. And my goal is to keep this into the family name, keep the same family members here in the county, and to make sure the county doesn't have to pay for it. And now that it's come within compliance, the neighbors and everybody are perfectly happy the way it looks, and my people plan to keep it that way. So it's a real upside as far as I can see.
All right, so we have a motion for the fine reduction to $3,000 from Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Davis. Any further discussion?
Would you have to apportion the amounts between the two?
Just for the record, Bill, say $2,000 for the first one.
Okay.
And we'll reduce the second one from $1,700 to $1,000. Is that
very good? Thank you.
Motion's amended to that point.
Yeah, the second is amended. Okay. We're all clear? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience and sitting through.
To the Chair, the next item on here I know is for me to discuss the Code Enforcement Board Attorney, but I know you gave Mr. DeBrawl the right to or the Commission did the opportunity to talk about the status of the Oslo boat ramp. I didn't know if you wanted that item before mine. That way we can make sure Bill gets cleared out of here.
I think we can take care of your second matter here in about 10 seconds if a commissioner would like to
move recommendation.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second from Commissioner Flesher. This is to hire the attorney, Jennifer Peschke, to represent the Indian River County Code Enforcement Board on a month-to-month basis and authorize the chairman to sign the attached legal services agreement. This is at the same rate as the previous attorney. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0 also. We added an update from Mr. DeBrawl to bring us up to speed from the hearing last week. Mr. DeBrawl, welcome again.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just wanted to update you as far as the formal hearing that we had last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with St. John's concerning the Audubon Society, or Pelican Island Audubon Society's challenge to the St. John's permit for improvements at the Oslo boat ramp. We spent 2.5 days at the hearing, and at the conclusion, now we're into the last phase of the proceeding. We've gone ahead and ordered a transcript of the proceedings. That should be in about 10 days. We will then file the transcript with the Division of Administrative Hearings. The three of us, St. John's, Pelican Island, and the county, will have 10 days to file a recommended proposed order with the judge where we offer up what we think should be included in the judge's final order. The judge will then have 20 days to file a proposed final order with all of the parties and the agency, St. John's in this case. The parties will then have 15 days to make exceptions to the final order, the proposed final order, and then St. John's will issue the final order. If you tally up the numbers, it looks like it's about 55 days, give or take a few for mailing. So the timetable for something like this will be about August, mid-August, sometime that we should hear something final from St. John's on the issue. The hearing, we thought, went very well. To sound a little bit like a NASCAR driver, the folks that I'd like to thank as far as that helped out with something like this, Kevin Hansen in our exhibits, when when the other side used our exhibits as demonstrative and exhibits as well. That spoke very highly of Kevin's work, and he did a very good job for us. Mike Nixon, our project engineer, had the task of going first and explaining the project, and did a very good job. Mike was very well prepared and didn't seem nervous or apprehensive about testifying about the project at all. Of course, George Kolsicki, our consultant, again did his usual ease of explanation of some complex matters. Roland DeBlois testified concerning the Manatee Protection Plan. It's always a big bonus when you have the person that co-wrote the plan explain to the judge some very complex issues as well. David Scriber did some good surveying work for us to the extent that the other side stipulated to it. St. John's offered up some awesome and amazing witnesses. I mean, oftentimes we tend to be critical of an agency, but if you would have sat in on Thursday afternoon's testimony as far as the work that they did on this project and listened to what they said, you would have been very impressed as we were. It's always nice when you're sitting there seeing the judge nodding when the witness is testimony, and there was a lot of very nice nodding that was being done when the St. John's witnesses
They weren't just tired
testified.
Right after 2.5 days.
No, and
They weren't nodding out.
That possibility was a little bit there as far as the testimony. It wasn't really exciting, but very, very well put forward. The clerk to the board as well. We did some research on some of the issues, and the clerk's office helped out greatly. Kate Kottner and Dana Larson were instrumental. Kate sitting and Dana sitting in really helped out a lot. I'd like to thank our staff for putting up with us being under the pressure of trial and probably not being the best folks to try and get along with. And lastly, your support. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to sit there and not make comments after we ask you to not make comments. But I'd just like to say thanks. I'm looking forward to the decision and where we go from here. The last thing that I wanted to just add is, as far as the folks that sat in and listened to it, there were quite a few supporters of the project. It wasn't an entire Autobahn audience. No one was out in front of the building on Friday holding a sign like the Autobahn folks were, but nonetheless, I was very pleased that people actually came out and listened, not just for a little while, but for an extended period of time as far as the hearing went on. So just like to say thank you, and if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Peter, Commissioner, if I may, Mr. DeBrawl mentioned a lot of people who were involved and instrumental in getting this done, and I really thank Bill for listing that list. But the one name you didn't hear was actually Mr. DeBrawl. Bill did a great job in leading this effort from day one. I know this is one of the first projects when I came on board here that I heard about, and Bill did an amazing job shepherding the application process all the way through to the final closing, and he did an amazing job. From what I wasn't able to attend, I was trying to hold everything in the office still going as everyone was ever there, but just what I heard from everybody was that Bill just did an amazing job. So I wanted to thank Bill personally for that.
You're welcome.
And I had gotten some feedback from some folks that commented that Bill and Kate had done a great job. And I guess Dana's most important contribution was running candy back and forth to everybody to keep everybody sharp and alert on that sugar high or something.
That, yes. And, there's so many different things that can go on at a hearing. And, the laundry list of folks that I just named off it's something that we don't do very often. It might be a small role in getting facilities management to turn down the air conditioning in a room that's now full of people. But as long as it makes it smooth and keeps everybody on their toes, it's just a very important function.
Good. Thank you very much, Bill.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moving on then to Commissioner matters. Under my items is a discussion from the board on Olive Board, Florida. as everyone knows, we've already hired a engineering firm to help us when the environmental impact statement is released. And I believe either late last week or this week, Dylan sent some information out that he does have the contract now with a law firm that has expertise in environmental reviews and EIS issues. And with us having a kind of a shortened meeting schedule next week and then the EIS potentially coming out, I just wanted to have the board have some discussion. What exactly will be our objectives for the engineering firm and particularly the legal firm that we want to achieve out of this as they move forward? And my concern is this, and Dylan can maybe add a little bit, but in his research of the different legal firms, he did find out that there have been instances where a train project has been effectively killed, that the project was scrapped, although it came at a cost of several $1 million. And my concern is that, you know, we know there's a 45-day window. We think that might be 75 days. We've asked for 90, but when it's all said and done, it's going to be a very short time frame. And I think things will start moving very rapidly. And my fear is that I don't want to have Dylan come to us every week or have the emergency edition saying, okay, the law firm says if you want to do this, it's another $100,000 or another $200,000, and we just kind of start shooting from the hip without a clear vision, and then we get to the point where, okay, well now we've committed $600,000. Do we commit $200,000 more without a clear objective of where we want to end up going in? And how I see it, there's kind of there's two extremes and then a big middle ground. Obviously, one extreme is there's a group of citizens that, from what I can tell, they don't care what concessions are made or what upgrades or safety improvements or anything. They just flat out don't want a train coming through town. And so their position is just shoot the darn thing and kill it. And in my definition of that would include moving it west of, on the turnpike, but killing it as far as running through the East Coast and through our middle of the town. Then on the other end, we have heard people come before us that say that they're in support of a train project. And so that's another group on the other extreme. And then somewhere in the middle, there have been people that have said, well, if we get a stop, it might be okay. So that there's some level of concessions where that group would say, okay, we are going to get a tangible benefit if we get a stop or quiet zones or any of these other concessions, and then therefore we would be okay with the train project. Now, having some discussions with other counties and cities, it sounds like Martin County is really gearing up under the camp of shoot the thing and kill it. Some of their, I guess, kind of their Johns Island equivalent communities are raising funds and hiring attorneys to gear up for a legal challenge to stop the project entirely. I think Port St. Lucie has taken a formal resolution to formally oppose the entire project.
I think Stewart has too.
I think Stewart has. St. Lucie County is going to be hearing a resolution very similar to the Martin County resolution. Here in town, both the city of Vero Beach and the city of Sebastian have only passed formal resolutions saying that they're opposed to the use of public funds and some of those earlier resolutions, but they haven't formally said we don't want it entirely. So I don't think we'll come to a decision on this today, but I did want to plant the seed or have some discussion now so that maybe by the first meeting in July or so, if this environmental impact statement has come out, that we can come to some type of clear objective to tell the law firm that we're willing to spend money to achieve, and then fill in the blank, is where do we want to go with this?
Well,
So, we'll just start here, then. I want everybody's opinion. To be honest with you all, gentlemen, I'm not 100% quite sure where I stand at this point. So I think this is preliminary, but I want to hear some discussion and have us throw some ideas out there so that in a couple of meetings or a couple of weeks, we can have that decision. But Commissioner Flesher will...
Commissioner, I respect the fact that you said, quite frankly, you don't know where you stand on this. There is some information that needs to come forward. I believe the jurisdictions that did go forward and plainly state, no, we're going to fight it, are holding on the grounds of public safety and the concerns. And I actually believe that the 11 people that are supporting the project in the county will understand if we went forward today. But I also understand that the EIS will give us a lot of information. I hope to get information that will support or amplify the concerns of public safety, and I believe that will. We could end this right today and just ask them just to go west, and that's the end of it. And then, like I said, we can send cards to those 11 individuals that are supporting it in the county. That's my feel, and I hope you understand that I believe I've gotten enough information. I just want to have the opportunity to see the EIS report before we say that definitive no. But okay. I am a no now. Sure.
Okay, good. Yeah. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, it's kind of like we get all the bad and none of the good, and then we could debate whether or not we have whether a stop is good or bad. I mean, like that, both sides of that issue. But I guess where I am on it, what my intent of supporting the motion is whenever we get this EIS, what do we do with it? How do we see to it that are addressed our concerns, and if they're not, how do we fight? And so that was why this is way out of my realm of expertise. So that's why I voted in favor of the motion, is to see that the issues that are unique to this community get addressed, and B, if they're not, then to fight it as much as we possibly can. And that's what I thought the intent was. So I don't know. I don't know that, until we get the EIS and then somebody other than me reads it, that knows what they're looking at, and then come back to me and say, okay, they're not looking out for our natural resources or historic, or safety. I mean, pick from what I understand, all the 22 items I think there was on the EIS of some kind, if my mind serves me correctly.
21 or 22.
21, 22, yeah. And so mine is to simply know that you got to look at your talents, and I don't know that anybody in here, they might be talented enough, but they're not experienced enough to take an EIS and to be able to react within 45, 75, or 90-day period. And that was the purpose of me approving those dollars, and that's where I am on it today.
Okay. Well, I'll give you an example. I've seen portions of the environmental assessment they did for the southern counties for the work they're doing, which is a little bit less detailed environmental report. In referring to the noise of the trains, the environmental assessment said that the ambient background airborne noise, so traffic, jets flying overhead, birds chirping, all that ambient background airborne noise was greater than the ground-based noise of the trains. So therefore, the noise of the trains was not considered to be a significant impact. And then the second part of that said, and because there's going to be less than 70 trains a day, it's considered infrequent, or some definition like that, meaning that even if it was an issue, it's so infrequent we don't consider it a major impact. So let's just assume they come back with that same wording for Indian River County and let's say we want to challenge that. We say, well, we think there is less airborne noise because Vero's smaller and we're quieter and we don't have a major international airport, et cetera, et cetera. Then I think, Dylan, and correct me, but then the attorney said, well, okay, what you need to do then is we have to go out and hire this noise expert. that is a specialist in noise, and he would have to build his case to fight that assumption, saying, oh no, Indian River County is very quiet, there is no background noise, and therefore the noise of the trains is an impact. But that would be an additional cost, is what I'm thinking. So, again, those are things that worry me, that it'll start happening real fast, because we'll probably be halfway through the whole time window before these things start piling up, and then we'll have to start making kind of rapid decisions on, is that something we want to challenge or not. So anyway, but let me, Commissioner Zork, and then...
if you don't mind then, give me the example, if you will, of the communities or the whomever was successful in stopping the rail. Just so I mean, was it Disney World or was it a real municipality?
Actually, I remember talking to a gentleman who gave an example, I believe, from New York, and they had killed a rail project. But what's interesting, it kind of piggybacks on what Commissioner O'Brien is talking about today, is they didn't actually end up getting there through the NEPA process, or what we talk about as the EIS. They actually ended up getting there through defeating the RIF loan that FRA had proposed or was going to hand out to the railroad. So that's a completely separate avenue of attack of the train. For instance, this board clearly said, Mr. Reingold, we know you don't have expertise in doing NEPA work, and we understand that's not why we hired you, but we want you to get someone who can do that. So that's what we've done, is we've gotten a firm who's got railroad experience and gotten the experience in being able to handle NEPA. Now, I think they're the type of firm who could handle also an attack on the RIF loan, but I'm not sure if that's within the context of what you're looking for today. So that's just kind of an example of different avenues of attacks that exist out there, based upon what I believe what Mr. Bryan brought today is kind of part of the discussion.
Okay, was it the RIF loan because they wanted to use it to build new tracks? Was it similar to what they're doing here, where all they're doing is putting it back the way it used to be with 2 tracks? What was the details of that?
The only thing I recall was when discussing with the attorneys, he said he felt that the initial phase of attack by the community through the NEPA process just hadn't been handled very well. And that when this attorney then was hired, they were essentially left with attacking other aspects of the rail, and that's where it led them to attacking the RIF loan concept. That's really all I know in terms of that attack, but I was more honed in on, well, I want to make sure my guys have an excellent law firm who knows how to handle the NEPA process, and has somebody who knows about our FRA and knows about the railroads in general.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Commissioner Zork?
I think probably the first thing we would probably like to see from them is, as soon as they get it, they read it, and kind of gauge the EIS report, that based on how it's written, how they're going to require them to do this, and this, their likelihood of success of going forward is X. Is it addressing so many of the concerns along the way that people may still not be happy about it, but that they may have addressed it through the EIS, that they're going to require them to do a number of closed corridors or enhancements or quiet zones or whatever it happens to be. It's kind of give us an overview of the feel of the way it's written. Hey, these guys, they're 80% there, or they're only 20% there. They got a lot of work they've got to do. Kind of gauge the EIS in pro and con for the railroad's application, just to know, is it written well? Are there challenge points that are low-hanging fruit, easy to get? That would be kind of their gut, not their gut feel of it, but maybe their initial overview, that they read it and get us a 3-page short summary of just how do they feel about how the EIS is written. If they come back and say, hey, this is a slam dunk for the railroad, you can't, the way they've addressed everything, there's no stopping it, then we have to change our thinking. Or if they say, hey, here's 4 things that you can do that are good avenues to stop it, then we can look at pursuing those 4 things. But I think we need an overview report once it comes out, and then we look at the specifics that we could then look at what they bring to our attention.
I guess the only thing there is, again, what are we asking them to look for?
Well,
the example you just gave, you say, well, here's 4 little things we can do to stop it.
Right.
So is that our goal, is to stop it? Or is it 4 little things that we want to mitigate, and if we get those 4 things, then we're okay with it?
Right.
So
I think go back to the first question.
That's my dilemma.
Right. Is go back to the first part, is if once they read it, they look at it and they go, this is a pretty sound EIS. They've covered the bases. They've crossed the T's, dotted the I's. They're in pretty good shape in being successful. I think that would be the first portion, at least for me, is how was the EIS prepared is it?
Yeah.
How does it address
Is it going to be a battle we can win?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say in the case of the other one, if the only way to defeat it is to cancel the RIF loan, I think FEC could figure out a way to write a check to cover the RIF loan and just pay for stuff. That may not be a real successful option here. I think if they want to do it, they'll find the money somewhere else and they'll skip the RIF loan. I think the RIF loan is because it's probably has some favorable issues with it, is why that was pursued. I don't know that for a fact, but I would think they picked that because it's got good terms or conditions or something. But I think the first part is the overview of how does this EIS look did they really do a great job? Have they really covered a lot of the bases? And they're kind of scoring, they're likely to be successful at this, or they're not. They've got holes in it. There's 10 things we can pick apart. I think we're all going to look at it, but we may not understand what we're reading because of the technical nature of it.
Okay. Commissioner Solari?
Thank you. There are a number of things. First, though, I need to get with Commissioner Flesher and get the 4 names that I don't have on my list of the people who support the project. And I do want to agree with Commissioner Davis. I mean, one of the reasons for getting the attorney is because it's outside my area of expertise, too, and so there's a lot we don't know. And on Commissioner O'Brien, going back to the Martin County Group, the Martin County Group evidently does want to stop it. That's where they're at. And they're already committed to raising the first $500,000. So they're well on the way. And I think that it's important for us to some extent, coordinate our activities. So I'd talk to the county attorney saying, listen, talk to the lawyer from the Martin County Group. And I just want to make sure that that's known and okay with the county commission, because I think that where we can, we want to make the biggest bang for the buck and not duplicate things that are unnecessarily duplicable. So I think that they need that open coordination. Going to Commissioner Zork on the RIF loan, my understanding of the RIF loan is just a little different from yours. I think that might be a linchpin of the project, because the rate that they get from the RIF loan, I was told by Mr. Roberts, was 5.75%. Fortress is borrowing money in the 9 to 10 or 11%, and that's Fortress companies, not even all aboard Florida.
Right.
So this loan is so favorable to them that first, I believe, that's why they're putting up with all the headaches for it.
Right.
Because it is monetarily significant. And second, I believe that if they don't have the RIF loan, it might reduce their rate of return, the required rate of return for the project below that which they do to go forward. So I think that could be a pivot. On Commissioner O'Brien's 3 things, of the no train, in support of the train, or the middle ground, I don't believe there is a middle ground, realistically. Listening to Mr. Roberts and listening to things they've said about, well, after we get started, then if you want to do a study to show that a rail stop is good for you, well, I personally just don't believe that, given the densities of the Treasure Coast communities, we'll ever have the density to warrant a stop, period. So I think that that's a red herring and a false choice. Of the two, then, between no train through town or in support of the train, I'd still like to hold a final decision because, again, as fellow commissioners have mentioned, we haven't gotten the information that we need. On the information request that I made back on April 10th, I haven't heard anything from them. I sent a follow-up letter to Mr. Roberts yesterday on that. And perhaps they'll make some response to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council request to get that same information. We'll see. I believe that as far as a little more direction towards for the county attorney right now, again, I believe we have to, as Commissioner Zork was saying, get the draft EIS, give both our county attorney and the lawyer we've hired some time to look at it, then have them discuss with the people in Mariner Sands to see if there's anything else that they've come up with and missed, and then go ahead and give the executive summary to us so we have a little bit more to go on. But there's certain other things that I find, a couple other things. I got an email from a Mr. Vitale, and he said that he made a request to the FRA for a copy of East Coast Industries loan request, and he hadn't heard back from him yet. So I'd like to get the board's consensus to ask the county attorney to follow up on that, to get the same information and suggest that they go ahead and fulfill the information request to Mr. Vitale, if that's okay with the board.
Or we could just ask for it under...
Well, we could ask for ourselves, but make it public. And second...
Okay, I'm sorry.
Another interesting thing was just over the weekend, I mean, this is a very fluid process, and things change on a daily basis. For instance, there was a article in the Tampa Bay Times, which I believe was also printed in the Miami Times, that came out according to the internet stamp Sunday, June 8th at 11 a.m. And in it, there's a quote that I made about he was talking about this gentleman was the first Tampa Bay area discussion of All Aboard Florida. And one of the issues of it was, well, are people in this, is it really the majority of the county that's against it, or the community that's against it, or just a small portion? And part of the article was Governor Scott's reaction to all of this. And in his form letter to people, he says, the state has no involvement in this railway. That was a quote from the letter. Well, I certainly believe the state does have involvement, and I said that in my quote. And Senator Negron is quoted as saying, opposition is overwhelming and growing. And I believe that's correct. But what was really interesting is, on the same day, there is a FDOT press release. And that FDOT press release, if you looked at it quickly, I thought it was a press release from All Aboard Florida. And I'll just read one of the claims that they made on this, and because they said, the big title of this is, Setting the Record Straight, Miami Herald on All Aboard Florida Project. And they put it down as a claim, quote, All Aboard Florida, which has said it will invest $1 billion in the project, is also seeking $1.5 billion taxpayer-backed federal loan. State Senator Joe Negron, Republican Stewart, cited the loan request as a source of controversy because it undercuts the idea of the project is funded privately. Well, I see that as more than a claim. That's my understanding of the facts. But then FDOT responds with facts. The loan referred to in the article is a Federal Railroad Administration loan. Well, the claim didn't say anything different than that. It says, a fact, the state of Florida is not providing funding to All Aboard Florida, nor does the state have any say as to whether they receive federal funds or loans. Well, the Negron quote clearly said that it was a federal loan. So again, the fact is odd. Then it says, the third one, All Aboard Florida will receive no state dollars or operating subsidies. Again, Senator Negron didn't say it was getting any subsidies. So, they posit these things as if there's something wrong about the statement. Then they give facts which don't contradict the statement at all. And that particularly worries me because, again, it may have been that FDOT simply overreacted on a Sunday morning, but I find it strange that FDOT even got out a public PR piece on Sunday.
Yeah, it takes 13 years from concept to concrete.
Yeah, well, this one took about less than 13 hours. But to me, it shows a bias in favor of All Aboard Florida, which is problematic. But interestingly, and again, this shows the fluidity of things, is that yesterday, Senator Scott sent out a letter which is really a change in his position. Scott, and this is quoting from a different article, Scott said that he has asked State Transportation Secretary Ananth Prasad to meet with community leaders and legislators about the project and ensure their voices are heard. Now that's a very different feel from the original auto response that he was giving people. Ensure voices are heard by the Federal Railroad Administration, the lead agency on the project and the agency that All Aboard Florida has asked for the $1.5 billion federal loan. So I think that our voices are being heard and being heard in Tallahassee, and I think this is important. So at this point, I think that we need to be as active and aggressive as possible. I would also like the consensus from the board to personally invite formally, and I'd ask the commissioner, the chairman, to write the letter or to send the letter under his name, invite Mr. Prasad to Indian River County for essentially a workshop or public discussion, whatever, so we can hash out the issues. And I suggest that we do this in the week of July 7th, only to give us time to prepare for it, him time to prepare for it, and hopefully to have the EIS out. But I think that if the governor has actually asked the state transportation secretary to be open and meet with community leaders, then we need to invite him down here as fast as possible. I'd like the letter to go out today so we can get first in the queue, because there are lots of things to ask about, including, I'm not sure yet, and I've heard different things from different people, who has authority to require sealed corridors, for instance? I've heard that the state has no regulations that address trains moving at more than 79 miles an hour. I've heard that the federal regulations say that there are sealed corridor requirements, but I've also heard from an FDOT engineer that, well, FDOT, the feds aren't going to require the sealed corridors, but FDOT certainly could require the sealed corridors, but I haven't seen anything in writing. So I think we'll have an opportunity to ask significant and important questions, and to have the members of our community be able to ask questions at a private session. So that is something I'll just ask the board if there's consensus with.
Commissioner, just so I'm clear on your position, because obviously you're not one of the 11 that Commissioner Fleischer referred to.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'd still like to be able to, as a commissioner, I'd like to hold something back until we get the information and find out. If we don't have information within the next 2 or 3 weeks, then I'd say I want to come out and fight it as hard as possible.
To kill it?
To kill it.
Okay. Right.
Only because the longer they delay getting out the information that I would need in order to fulfill my fiduciary duty as a commissioner, the more suspicious I am of the process. The things like the FDOT public relations statement, the response to the Miami Herald article, doesn't make me feel too good about FDOT actually using their best efforts to represent us. It feels like they've already...
And I'm just trying to get a feel for where the board is.
Yeah, and I'll finish up by saying, if we at the end of the day have to spend $500,000 or $1 million to protect our community, I believe it will be money well spent. So,
okay. But in the same vein, if some of your concerns are addressed and answered, then does the project go forward?
Well, it may. I mean, I think that...
That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, at this point, as a commissioner, I'm not trying to stop the project.
Okay.
But I certainly want to be incredibly aggressive to make sure that we're protected on all points. And if we don't get questions answered, then I will migrate, again, because a year ago I thought it was a private project on private property by a private company, and I was happy for it to go forward. When more information came out, I certainly not so kumbaya with the project. Right. And if it goes in the direction it seems to be headed, then I will be against it.
Okay. And I appreciate that, and that was kind of just what I was looking for with today's discussion. Just let us all kind of air some thoughts and ideas out there. So 2 things from what I've heard. If you could get with Dylan the wording of the letter you would like to go out, I'll be glad to sign it.
Fine.
If you could do that, if that's okay with
that's
Commissioner...
That's the Secretary Prasad letter.
Fleischer and Davis. So if you could get with Dylan, put in the things you want, and I'll be gladly to sign it as coming from the entire board as chairman. So we'll get that out. Then I think the second thing is maybe just have Dylan be able to give these firms a little bit of direction. Then, like Commissioner Zork mentioned, that what we'd be looking for fairly rapidly is a quick executive summary of the EIS, kind of saying, yeah, they've covered all the bases. It looks like they've addressed every 21 of these issues. There might be a couple little things we can nitpick, but other than that, it looks like it's a really good EIS. Or, no, there's a lot of holes. It's terrible. Here's 5 or 6 areas where we might recommend you really want to go after because this is where it really fell short. And does that sound like at least a direction that will give us the information we need?
A start. Yep.
Is that a start? And Commissioner, sorry, you...
I'm fine.
Okay. You want to say those 5 difficult words?
Well, I had to do a lot of work to get to that.
I know. So, Dylan, will that kind of help you give them a little direction then?
That's fine. I mean, this is, the draft EIS is a public document, and certainly if it's this board's will, certainly will provide, whatever type of executive summaries or information the board would like to keep this transparent. Obviously, as an attorney, it's always easiest to talk to your outside counsel and keep things in-house and keep them quiet, but in the face of this, I think it would be, appropriate to keep you guys informed of the process, in an open, transparent manner.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Dylan.
All right. Any other further comments or discussion on that? Okay. Dylan?
One other issue, and certainly before any public input is taken. There was also the mention of a Mr. Vitale letter. I heard about it in discussion. Was there something you wanted me to do with that, or is that more focusing on inviting Mr. Persat or Ms. Persat?
That would be a separate one, and that would be a request. We'll just make the request, the same request for the copy of the RIF loan information that he has made. So we'll just make it, if it's okay, on behalf of the county.
Yeah.
And there's that, and if I can get that back so I can tell Mr. Vitale what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
So you'll get with Dylan, get those letters drafted, and I'll be glad to sign them as soon as they're ready.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you like the Vitale letter to come from the chair, or would you just like me as the attorney?
You as
the attorney, I'll just send something to FRA.
Okay. Ms. McKenzie?
Good afternoon. Did you come to a decision on what you're doing? Because I'm sitting listening and I'm trying to figure out. You're hiring an attorney. Do you want them to address only the EIS report, or do you want to take this process all the way through?
What we have come to a consensus is that we would like the engineering firm we've also hired, as well as the attorney, to both review the EIS and as soon as possible come back and report to us basically an executive summary of how they feel the EIS was written, whether they felt it, and again it's 21 or 22 different standards it's supposed to address. So what we would like to know is, did the EIS adequately address all those standards? Did it seem to cover them, identify the issues, things like that? Or is it sorely lacking in some of those areas, and identify for us 4, 5, 6 particular areas where they feel it was very lacking and that we should then focus on those issues. And then the overall consensus, what I heard from the board, is that we're not in a position to say whether we want to kill it or not, but we are looking for the additional information.
Okay. But if you're unhappy with the report, what will that do for you since you're going to have a limited time frame? And where I'm going with this is, you talked about the different counties and how they feel. I think this is one project that, besides the 11 people, that 7, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0, 0, that my experience in dealing with attorneys, okay, and I'm going to just give you an example if I can, because that's the best way. You got to make a decision if you're getting a divorce or not, okay? When you go to an attorney, you need to say, this is what I want the end result to be. Then the attorney says to you, these are 3 ways we can get there. You understand? If the case goes this way, then we go this way. If the case goes this way, then we go this way. And then if the case goes this way, we go this way. But if you don't start with a real solid, this is what we want, then you can't develop strategy. Just getting a report on the EIS report is not really going to move you any closer to resolving what it is that you want. So what I would suggest is to say the EIS report, yes, needs a review and you do need a conclusion, but if you wait to the middle of July till the report comes out and then they give you feedback, then you're having to quickly react. So in addition to what you're doing, you need to come up with a specific strategy. Case study A, case study B, case study C. Case study A, go west. Case study B, okay, we can't fight this thing, it's coming through. What are our best options? And then case study C, how do we go? Because in mentioning, when you hire an attorney, I want to know your success rate, and I want to know, have you handled this case before, and do you have other case studies, and what are the options? You kind of do that legwork before you get to the attorney's office, because I want to know, am I getting a divorce or not? And then, are we going to be able to settle the case? And what happened here is great with the EIS, but you didn't come to a real solid, what are we going to have the attorneys do? So are you just having them address the EIS, and then when you get to that stage, kind of have the clock still ticking, and then figure out what you want to do going down the road? I think at this point it would be safe to move ahead, and if you really feel like you're moving ahead without the consensus of the public, then I would suggest that you gentlemen put this item on the upcoming election, so as you move forward with more litigation, you can say the voters of the county said, no, we don't want this by 87%, and therefore we can use that as a tool to move forward. But being ambiguous about it is not going to help. You got to come up and decide whether you want this thing or don't want this. It's going to kill this county. There's a lot of things, and then when they do their EIS report, we also need to have our list of why it doesn't work for us, so we can dovetail those together. But the direction needs to be a little more solid, which is what you started out with, Commissioner O'Brien. What do we want them to do? An executive summary can be done by a focus group. If you're paying an attorney, I want the attorney to tell me how we're going to get this thing resolved and what are their 3 options on it. And if we go with Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, how many hours do you anticipate and how much money do we need to come up with? So that was my suggestion on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to the chair, clearly it's not just going to be those 21 items. I mean, there are going to be other things. For instance, I know I've even had kind of red flags get raised in my mind as to how the processes work so far. So those may also come into play in the analysis. But I just want to raise that.
Yeah. And again, my intent of bringing this up was just to have some discussion among the board. I don't expect a hard answer from anybody today. I wanted to plant this seed so we do start thinking about and developing our thoughts along those lines. But I think with what we've instructed Dylan and letters going out, that we are continuing to keep our eye on this and try to make a good, intelligent decision on this. So,
I think we all have spoken, and I believe that the general public knows where we stand over the past discussions throughout this year. But in all fairness, it would be irresponsible and inappropriate to make any stance prior to the release of the EIS. I think we owe that modicum of respect of the responsible data to come forward, and at that time have a solid response.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Gentlemen, Commissioner Zork got called away by an emergency family matter. He did have an item here to whether to be a member in the St. Johns River Alliance. We can go ahead and introduce this. If there's not support for this, I then might ask that we table it until Commissioner Zork can address it next week.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some questions about it, so I just assume we table it and let him be able to explain it.
I think it's most appropriate to table.
I'm very good with that. I think that's fair. So we will then table that till next week when Commissioner Zork can rejoin us. There being nothing further on the agenda, with that, we stand adjourned.